Let's talk about protein for a bit. It is still very common in India to see protein as a bodybuilder supplement. But that's not right. Protein is not just crucial for muscle building and recovery, but for overall health, immune function, and energy levels. In our busy lives, getting enough protein via food can be very tough. That's where Muscle Blaze Biozyme Performance Whey comes in. India's #1 whey protein, trusted by over 6 million plus customers. Each scoop gives you 25 grams of quality protein. Their patented EAF technology ensures superior digestion and absorption without any bloating issues. It's available in multiple flavors and free from heavy metals, preservatives, pesticides, and artificial flavors. This is also the most internationally tested and certified whey protein. Add Muscle Blaze Biozyme Whey to your routine for a convenient and effective way to hit your protein targets. Use my code PGMB for the best discount on muscleblaze.com. So, Abhijit, as always, it is a pleasure. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you for having me, as always.
It does not seem genuine when he says it somehow. It seems like he doesn't mean it.
You're my friend, yaar. I'm always happy.
Yaar, formality mat karo, bhai. Formality mat karo. But no, how have you been, man? We haven't spoken in a very long time. And today I'm hoping to talk about Iran and Israel. That's one of the things I want to take up because I spent a lot of time with my Israeli friend on this trip, and things are concerning. Things are not minimized. Yeah. My perception of being Indian, even when I went back in 2017 and now to America, it's a radically different world for being Indian around the world. The perception of India is radically different. Although I do think Indians overestimate the perception, at least right-wing sort of discourse on Twitter will overestimate that. But we are major player now. We're not minor players, at least in pedestrian perception, as far as that goes.
Let's put it this way. We're still middling players. The right wing thinks we're Superman.
Yeah.
The left wing thinks we're Adolf Hitler.
Right, I can see that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think the real estimation is we're middling players. And the reason we're given the deference closer to the right wing's perception of us as Superman rather than the left wing's perception is because India isn't the sort of diffident, inferiority complex ridden country it was 15, 20 years back. So a lot of countries are willing to massage our ego a bit.
Right.
But that doesn't mean we should lose our realism and start thinking we're Superman.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. I agree. That part I agree. Like when I'm in America and somebody calls me and they're like, Modi ji's in America, how is people's perception? I'm like, nobody knows. The Indians know. The Gujaratis on the East Coast, they all know. But that's about like us, we'll know, NRIs will know, but nobody really cares. So that I do understand what you're saying. And I think, you're right. The realism is that we're probably middling players going up and certain geopolitical events might happen that might propel us further. And my bet is, okay, this is my theory. You might find me very wrong. I spent a lot of time I had a lot of friends in college who were military men. My college in Columbia is a college for people who are older and going into undergrads. So a lot of actors, a lot of ballet dancers, and a lot of military men show up. And then there's idiots like myself. So I was surrounded by a lot of military men from Israel because all of Israel goes through conscription and they're 21 when they come out. So they apply to this college. This is one of their only channels into Ivy League education. So 20-30% military men were from Israel and then 20-30% were from America. ठीक है, सारे वो 5 साल का contract खत्म करके आते हैं. And this happened on 2 occasions, bro. So one of my closest friends is a Jewish guy, fights for the Israeli military. He's like a brother to me. And I mean this in as many ways as I can say it. He is legitimately like a brother to me. Like my biggest concern is his safety, right?
But of course, I'm your husband.
Well, bro, I'll let you have what you want. But don't grope me, okay?
You groped me, Haramzadeh.
So, but you don't grope me. That's not allowed. You are going to follow my orders.
Ooh, kinky. I love it.
He responds. Anyway.
Will you be tying me up and
bro, come on, shut up.
This?
Focus on the issue. I was talking to him, bro, and he would bring up World War III quite a bit. And I'm not much for this paranoia or this sort of chest thumping, oh my God, this is coming, the sensationalism.
So let me contextualize this. Every country has a self-image of itself out of proportion with reality. You'll keep hearing Americans say we're the greatest country in the world.
Yeah.
What does that mean in practical terms?
Right.
Britain was the greatest empire on earth.
Right. What does it mean in practical terms?
Roman Empire was the greatest empire. What the hell, man?
Right.
China is a force for civilization, the Chinese way, whatever nonsense. India, Vishwa Guru. किस चीज का गुरु है तू? ठीक है?
It's a self-image thing.
It's a self-image thing. So, Israel thinks that what it does has global repercussions and whatever. We need to understand this is a localized conflict.
You don't think it'll... Because you are also not just fighting against... Well, first of all, I think Palestine will become very irrelevant in this debate now that Iran's entered, and I want to talk about that a little bit. But you don't think that the global Muslim Brotherhood is going to take up arms if this keeps going on?
First, this notion of a global Muslim Brotherhood.
I know it's fractionated, but...
Completely.
But you don't think strategically Israel, as it keeps pushing against Lebanon, then Iran, then the Gazan sort of deep victims, these little babies and so on, eventually a Turkey, a Pakistan, Yemen, and all these countries will begin to respond?
First, Yemen is a non-functional state.
Sure.
Pakistan abhi bhikari hain.
But nuclear armed bhikhari.
Yeah, but they will use the nuclear only for themselves. Understand? That is a very self-interested... they don't even allow their own countrymen to grow. It is a bunch of 200 families that has controlled all the wealth and kept it to themselves.
They're a feudalist state, but they're still serious military, no?
They're a very serious military.
Yeah, right.
Okay?
Yeah.
But their foreign policy is all about protecting the investment of the
200 people.
Okay.
Right.
Turkey again. Lots of bluster, very little action. The amount they can be compromised because of the amount of technology Israel supplies to NATO arms, F-16s and planes like that Turkey uses is enormous. So that's a natural check on them. Hamas is essentially a Muslim Brotherhood offshoot, kind of. Not exactly. I'm not going to get into the nuance of that. Egypt hates the Muslim Brotherhood. General Sisi came to power by removing the Muslim Brotherhood from power. Mohammad Morsi was the president, throwing him in jail, and the man died in jail.
Okay.
Was possibly killed off in jail. He has zero tears for Gaza. Okay, all his tanks are not facing the Israeli border; they're actually facing the Gazan border. They don't want Israelis to cross the border less than they don't want Gazans to cross the border.
That is a known. Paradox of
Jordan.
Jordan.
Their biggest worry, because they're 70% Palestinian. Jordan is the only country where the immigrants are more than the native Bedu. The queen considers herself a refugee. Have you ever heard of a queen considering herself a refugee? Queen of Jordan, enormous wealth, goes for multi-million-dollar shopping trips to London. I'm a refugee and I'm Palestinian. Okay, congratulations to you. Public में गाली देते रहते हैं for public consumption. In private, when Iran attacks Israel like it did in April with a multi-drone strike.
Right, yeah.
This time it was ballistic, that time it was drone. All the Jordanian F-16 fighters are up in the air defending Israel. Okay. Syria, dysfunctional completely. Lebanon, the Christians hate the Shias out there. They don't talk about it because Hezbollah will kill them. Lebanon, there are more Lebanese outside Lebanon than there are in Lebanon. There are more Lebanese in Brazil than there are in Lebanon.
Brazil.
Yeah, Brazil.
Strange, huh?
Yeah. And overwhelmingly Christian, by the way. Lebanon is one of those countries where it's been condomized in that sense. First, the Sunni Palestinian refugees overwhelmed the population and turned it into a base for Palestinian terrorism. So Lebanon got invaded. Then Hezbollah took it over and turned it into a base for Shia terrorism. And now Israel is back in again to destroy them again. Lebanon, ठीक है. Iraq,
dysfunctional.
The Bahrainis, Saudis, Emiratis, Omanis are all quietly standing behind and clapping.
And making money dealing with Israel.
With Israel, their intelligence cooperation with Israel. And intelligence is more addictive than, I don't know, is cocaine very addictive? Or I think opioids. Heroin is addictive, no? More than heroin or more than crystal meth. Because once you start getting quality intelligence, it becomes so valuable, you can never give it up. And Israel provides them with so much intel, both electronic intelligence, military intelligence, and tactical intelligence, that they don't want to sever. That is too important a relationship for them, which is why they even refuse. MBS has gone to the extent of saying, I care about what happens in Saudi Arabia, not what happens in Palestine. The Emiratis,
The Gulf is
are flying. Fly Dubai is the only airline. They don't care what alerts come, what missile attack comes. Fly Dubai keeps flying flights 8 times a day to Tel Aviv. It is Israel's favorite destination going east now. Has become Fly Dubai and Emirates. Okay, the Qataris are playing every game. They're a malignant actor that's playing every game. It's probably the only powerful, but they also talk to the Israelis in private. Not cordially, but fine. Bolte rehte hain. Iran is the big...
Bro, you can't go over 60. There's 60 Muslim countries, no?
Yeah.
60.
All of them count for nothing. I'm only talking about the major countries.
Okay.
Indonesia, let's take the really major country, Indonesia.
Okay.
Okay. They've washed their hands clean of this. They're like, yeah, we support Gaza and all of that, but actual action mein kuch bhi nahi. So what do you have left? Iran is the only man standing left. The Central Asian states don't care. Azerbaijan has an extremely close military relationship with Israel, which the Armenians really resent.
Right.
The Central Asian republics don't give a damn.
Uzbek, Kazakh, they don't care.
They don't give a
They're a very different kind of Muslim also. They're very like
the Sudan has diplomatic relations with Israel. They don't give a damn. Morocco, Tunisia, kuch suna hai. They don't. They're all keeping quiet.
So you were saying it's a one-sided war at this point?
It's a completely one-sided.
And will you admit that this is war?
And here's the thing: if Israel hits Iran, nobody will be happier than the Emiratis, Bahrainis, and Saudis.
All Sunnis would be very happy.
Not just Sunnis. The Sunni monarchies will be very happy. Because understand, the Islamic revolution in Iran and the Muslim Brotherhood started first. They wanted a theocratic state. I can go into the philosophies of Hassan al-Banna and Sayyid Qutb and all of that. This is not a thing on
like we don't have to get into
on political
Islamic
Islam. But it started off that kings need to be removed and Arab republicanism came, like Nasser. Arab republicanism was deemed too secular and dirty by the Muslim Brotherhood, so they wanted a theocratic republic,
right,
which they were not really able to achieve anywhere. Shia Iran achieved it first through the 1979 revolution.
Yeah.
Now, the problem is all these countries, all the monarchies, detested the Muslim Brotherhood. They detested secular revolution as well. But they detested Muslim revolution even more because their source of legitimacy comes from the fact that they protect the Quran. The sultans believe they have religious blessing to be where they are.
Right.
So this undermines not just their control over society, but all their religious validation for it. So they hated the Muslim Brotherhood. Now, the Muslim Brotherhood never managed to achieve that revolution. In Iran, it did. It was the Shia version of it.
Right.
So they immediately isolated. That is where the re-eruption of the Shia-Sunni schism emerges. And they see it as both a religious threat to them and a systemic political threat to them. They are extremely happy when the Muslim Brotherhood gets bombed and killed, as they are in Gaza. They are also extremely happy when any other person who espouses Muslim Brotherhood style theocracy over king ideas, theocratic republic over or in substitute for king's ideas. Anywhere that succeeds, if it gets bombed, these guys are supremely happy. They have done absolutely nothing to impede Israel in any form or way. In private, they're sitting and encouraging them.
Okay, let's take this step by step because there's many concerns I have and it's a little higher order probably discussion than most videos because people are basically like, what is happening? I'm going to skip through that and get to the fucking meat, right? So here are a few things. One, on an ethical level, can you hold Israel guilty because...
Guilty of what?
Of the loss of civilian life in Gaza?
It's collateral damage.
Can you not say then that what happened on October 7 in 2023 was collateral damage?
No, and I'll tell you why. Okay, this we have to categorize terrorism, collateral damage, war crime. Okay, so state actor targets a military installation, perfectly legitimate. In the targeting of the military installation, Collateral happens and civilians die. Unfortunate but legal. State actor targets civilian installation. War crime. Not
Terrorism.
No, not
acha.
terrorism.
War crime.
War crime.
War crime.
Okay? Not terrorism. We need to be very clear about this.
ठीक.
Definitionally, terrorism cannot be carried out by a state.
ठीक.
Non-state actor hitting a military installation, in my book, that is not terrorism.
It's resistance?
It's not resistance. It's, I guess, a legitimate attack.
Okay.
I think Zippy Livni, who used to be the prime ministerial candidate in Israel, also had that. It's an opinion that gets attacked because it's the politically correct mafia. But the definitionally correct mafia, non-state actor attacking a military installation, not a terrorist, which is why, or a legitimate state target, not a terrorist, which is why Bhagat Singh cannot be a terrorist. So this nonsense of one man's freedom fighter being another man's terrorist is bullshit. This is a way of playing around with definitions, like Pakistan says, oh, we are a bigger victim of terror than India is. Therefore, we cannot be terrorists.
Right. I see what you mean.
So Bhagat Singh, not a terrorist. The attack on Lord Hardinge by, I think it was Ras Behari Bose, or was it Udham? I forget.
Right.
Not terrorism. So non-state actor attacking a state target, not terrorism. Collateral damage in that attack, terrorism. Okay? Non-state actor attacking civilian, terrorism. Okay? We need to make this very, very clear because people deliberately confuse these things.
Right.
Now, what is the definition of collateral? First, there are legitimate targets in war. Okay? There's a difference between peacetime and war targeting. And people tend to confuse these principles very easily. So this is why, there is jus in bello, there's jus ad bello. So justice in war. It was a concept that was first developed by, what's his name? Saint Augustine of Hippo. He's very famous in the Catholic thing. He lived around 400 AD-ish in Carthage.
Hey, pull this up. Saint Augustine of Hippo.
He lived in Carthage. And he was killed during the Vandal siege of Carthage. He was himself a very violent man, so whatever. But he developed the sort of initial jurisprudence around justice in war. At what point can a war be called just or not? Now it's a much more sophisticated legal canon, international law, not deriving from all of this, right?
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So what happens in this is, in peacetime, there is a civilian building where a terrorist is running their operations out of precisely because it is a civilian building, using it as cover. In peacetime, your threshold is, yaar, bahut sare civilians hain. Even though I know this bastard, I want to get him, I can't bomb. I'm not going to bomb that building. Or you do what the Israelis do, which is that they do a double tap method. They
let the civilians know you need to evacuate.
And they explode a little high sounding bomb on top of it so that they know they've got to evacuate, just in case they didn't get SMS or they didn't check their SMS,
and
WhatsApp,
they also throw all these
or they were
things,
wearing noise cancelling earphones and all of that. You used to wear that shit, no, to look cool on these podcasts once upon a time. Ab tune khatam kar diya hai, but whatever. Vinamra still does it. Maybe he's in the Stone Age or whatever.
Right.
But ye hota hai,
ठीक.
In wartime, you're not looking at the civilians. Rather, you are. But it's a time critical target in there. And at that point, you are, bro, there is a responsibility on you to know what the hell is happening in your basement. Okay? And if you're in a terror locality, it's not our responsibility. So the thresholds change. Now, this is where the gray zone comes in. Is that civilian target? Now, the Arabs will tell you this is civilian targeting. The Israelis will say, no, this is military targeting. And unfortunately, at this point of time, we had to take a call. Did we know there was going to be a civilian loss of life? Yes. Could we have avoided it without getting without losing the target? No. And therefore, it is a just call.
And so you don't think there is any indiscriminate or accidental, purely civilian targets that are happening in this?
There have now understand all polices and militaries hide psychopaths in them. This is like Dexter, the series Dexter, right?
Yeah, I have an idea.
You don't hide a needle in a haystack. You hide a needle with other needles. So when somebody wants to kill, they go into the police or security forces, or there could even be work-related trauma that leads to a sort of this
Sure.
thing. Could some incidents possibly have happened? Sure, I have not seen evidence of it yet. Okay, I've been looking very, very hard for evidence. So, for example, today somebody put out a tweet saying the number of children that were shot in the head.
Yeah, 13 people. Yeah, I saw that. There's some doctor reporting
now,
that.
That would be...
Wait, just so that people know what the tweet was, it is a doctor from Flint, Michigan, who's been in war-torn areas talking about how often when they were in Gaza, they saw children being shot either in the chest or the head as part of their emergency protocol.
Yes.
And that begs the question, what is really happening? Yes, right.
Okay.
And so you were saying?
Now.
Right.
And I'm like, bro, if you were a doctor, how have you not documented this by taking photos?
And so you think this is a Twitter rumor?
I am not believing anything till I see it.
Right.
Okay? Right. And this is why I'm telling you, brosint, there is OSINT and there's brosint. OSINT is open source intelligence. Brosint is bro, trust me, bro.
Yeah, right.
Okay?
Right.
I don't believe brosint. I need to see things with my own eyes. And at that point, I'll believe it. I am yet to see, every single Israeli bomb I have seen going into a building. Why is there always a secondary explosion?
Why?
Because there's ammunition stored out there. Why is it that everything that is claimed as killing civilians, Hamas then puts out saying in this strike martyrs were killed?
Also. So there were
people out there, right? This is a classic case of war targeting. Now, for the average uninformed people like Being Human and Zubair and people like that and Kim Kardashian watchers and Carrie Minati watchers, they will not get the nuance of Yusim Bello, Yusad Bello and things like that. But for people who generally follow me, that standard is a bit higher,
right.
And they will know what they'll more or less know what war targeting is. Now, this is why I'm telling you, collateral damage when a government does it, regrettable but not a war crime. War crime is intent to kill civilians. When non-state actor does it, it does become terrorism.
I have a question. First of all, I think we can both admit, and we are coming roughly from the same side because I have an interested party in this debate. We can admit that Israel is standing on a very tough ethical fault line, right? It's very easy to slip on the other side.
It's very easy to slip. I'm sure some slippages have happened.
Right.
I'm sure
right.
that it is a statistical certainty that some slippages have happened.
Right.
But I have not seen evidence of that yet. The thing was, the one slippage we know about that we've not seen proof of because it was a targeting thing was those chefs for poverty or whatever, Ferhan Adria's thing, which got bombed by the Israelis. The Israelis have sacked the intelligence guys who targeted that thing, and I think some of them are being court-martialed or whatever.
Right. So two things. One, if something like this has happened since, right, if we believe this, does it not retroactively legitimize Palestinian resistance because you now are standing on equal grounds, roughly speaking?
No, you're not. There is absolutely no moral equivalence between a soldier or a targeting or a fighter going rogue and a calculated decision to come in and attack civilians, rape them, torture them, kill them, take them back as hostages. Remember, intent is 9/10 of the law in everything. Okay, intent to attack civilians, take them back and whatever, as opposed to, now, had these guys come in and only attacked military installations.
Right. You would be fine with it.
I won't be fine with, I'm never fine with anybody attacking anyone. But it would have been impossible for the Israelis to justify the kind of actions we're seeing. The actions we're seeing is because they attacked the kibbutzes of Neroth, Be'eri and the Nova Festival. Okay?
Right.
In Reem. That is why it is justifiable action. Okay. Huge difference in that. Now, in that, if one or two people had gone rogue and done all of this, you could still say that Israeli action was not justifiable. This wasn't one or two people going rogue, bro. This was the entire fucking thing. They knew what was happening.
There was a machinery behind it.
There was paragliders coming in, motorized paragliders coming in to attack the Nova Festival. They all landed at the Nova Festival because they wanted to target the Nova Festival.
Yeah. It's not
it
a
was
one-off.
deliberate civilian targeting.
Okay.
There is absolutely zero moral equivalence out there. You cannot say that in a just campaign or a perfect military campaign, if one or two human rights abuses happen, it negates the entire validity of that campaign or puts it in a moral equivalence. Okay. It is impossible to maintain one. There is no military campaign on earth ever that has not seen cases of human rights violations or war crimes happening here or there.
Right. It's an unfortunate function of war. Almost.
It is an unfortunate function of war, and the discretion you give your
Soldiers.
officers and soldiers, which can very easily be turned around. This is a thing that so many military minds have, been applying their minds to prevent this from happening. And generally they've reached the conclusion, and unfortunately this isn't Google University or WhatsApp University, so most people won't read all the literature behind it. The general conclusion is it's almost impossible to stop.
I think there's something primal that goes into a man when they kill someone. I think that's my guess from a purely psychological standpoint. And
it's not your guess. It's actually a fact.
Yeah.
Because remember, our closest relatives, the chimpanzees, have this. They're the only other animals, I think, other than, geese and dolphins and killer whales, who take great pleasure in torturing, raping and murdering.
Yeah, chimpanzees
Bonobos, which are smaller chimpanzees, don't do that.
No, they're very sex-oriented.
They're very sex-oriented, but there's something about the Zaire River opening up which separates bonobos from chimpanzees, an uncrossable barrier, which made chimpanzees like that. And there is that gene in every single human being that enjoys torturing, raping and killing. It requires a huge amount of societal control.
Right.
And understand, this is something we see in the progression through Stone Age, Bronze Age, Iron Age, and Industrial Age.
In fact, we see it all the way up until now, right? Like only now we have this political sort of messaging around not indulging in it, but I'm pretty sure
also the state instruments of control to deter it.
Yeah, right.
Which is why crime is much higher in underdeveloped states. Where the state monopoly on violence isn't established. Deterrence isn't there.
Right.
Okay. So this is a very deep psychological dive.
Right.
But is there a Nazi or a Hamas in all of us? Yes. Does it reside in an Israeli or a Jew as well? Yes. But the Israelis control it like a first world country does. It is the best you can do under the circumstances. Understand this. Nobody can eliminate the problem completely. So there is zero moral equivalence between Israel and Hamas. Let's be very clear about that.
My second question is this. So as an isolated instance of bombing a building where you think there is Hamas operatives and then civilians and civilians will die, I understand it's collateral. As an isolated instance today, tomorrow, day after, using your explanation, I see the justification, right? But when I'm sitting and I know, listen, guys, this is what we're going to do and we're going to do it over the next 1 year. At that point, I think the sum of the parts is greater than the totality of the parts. Like what you come up with is knowing that in this process, it's not an accident of trying to deal with Hamas operatives and therefore having this incidental collateral damage of civilians. When you know that this is going to carry on for the next 3 to 12 months or even more at this point, you are actually faced with the question that, and legally, jurisprudence, right? All of these things, you have to factor in the fact that intent is boiled in, like, ab to main civilian maar hi raha hu na.
I get your question.
Right.
You're saying that when the peacetime targeting has moved to wartime targeting.
And it's a prolonged wartime.
And peacetime targeting prioritizes the civilian, whereas wartime targeting prioritizes the terrorist living under the civilian.
Right.
When it shifts to that, and you're willing to accept this, does it not translate into intent?
And for years.
For years.
Yeah.
Okay. No, it does not. And you know why?
Why?
Because what it does is it shifts the responsibility of awareness, of situational awareness of where you are, onto the civilian. That the civilian has to assure themselves, they have to ensure that they have to be much more aware of their surroundings. Am I living in an area where there are shady people, where there are bunkers where I'm not allowed to go, where I've seen thugs and things? This could most possibly.
Where is a Gazan going to go? That land is literally, what, 8 square kilometers? Like it's the size of Manhattan? Bahut chota hai? What is the size of Gaza?
It's about 70 kilometers by about...
and then 3 or 4 kilometers across, no? Check.
The broadest part, I think it's about 10.
Yeah, and you
10,
can't
15.
escape. You can't escape to the south because Egypt will not let you escape, which is this whole different sort of thing we never discussed. That the Muslim Brotherhood will not accept the Gazans, right?
Correct.
And they can't go anywhere else because on one side there is the sea and the other side it's Israel. So you are basically, the argument which metaphor, or rather it's known as
so the question really is,
where do the civilians go?
Why aren't the Gazans then saying, Hamas, enough, stop hiding amongst us?
And do what? Go out in the open and take bullets?
That's what...
No Hamas guys.
No Hamas is going to do that.
Yeah.
So why aren't Palestinian mothers, if Palestinian mothers are actually worried about their kids, why aren't they taking on Hamas and making themselves clearly distinguishable?
I think what is happening, and this is my last question on this issue, is the direct opposite, which is every time you kill a collateral civilian, you instigate 10 people to radicalize.
No.
Why?
No. And I'll tell you why. Usually that's the case till... So this is like Germany after First World War and Germany after Second World War. You have a Wilhelmine Germany which is revanchist, which wants revenge for past historical wrongs or whatever,
Right.
that does not get crushed in the First World War, that harbors all this resentment,
Right.
radicalizes. The First World War did not see intentional massacring of civilians, unlike the Second World War did.
Right.
Which then boils into the Second World War, and it requires the nuclear bombing of Japan. It requires the capture of the Reichstag and the sacking of Berlin to crush that revisionism in both of them. Now, Israel has tried this throughout. There are two parts to this question. Israel has tried this throughout, and now it's come to the conclusion that this has to be a Berlin Reichstag moment.
That we have to crush this aspiration of freedom.
Crush this, not the aspiration of freedom. This thing, Gaza was free. There was not 1 inch of Gaza that was under occupation. On the 6th of October, not 1 square inch of Gaza was under occupation.
But they're also living very second-grade lives.
Who told you second-grade lives?
Well, I've been to the border.
I've been inside Gaza, bro.
Right. I've been almost as close as I could get.
Yeah, well, I've been inside the border.
Right, but it's pretty
Boss, trust me, even in better off so-called slums here, the life is much lower.
I can see that.
Even in an area like, if you go to the Gaza beachfront and things like that, bro, the quality of flats and things like that is same like Southex, GK,
I can see that.
things like that.
Yeah.
It's not Jorbag or Golf Links or Prithviraj Road or...
Central sort of Delhi in that way.
Not Lutyens Delhi, but it's easily GK whatever, okay? Right. There was no shortage of food, there was no shortage of anything. And even those shortages, why were they happening? It's because Hamas insisted on the destruction of Israel. You can't keep saying, I'm going to kill you. You supply me with food, supply me with electricity, supply me with water. And Israel was still supplying them with food, electricity and water.
I think the...
But wait, we're getting dragged away from this thing.
Right.
So, first is the thing that, even in the categorization you're talking about of shifting from peace targeting to war targeting with a priority shift, it does not, because the focus then becomes on the civilian and the awareness of the civilian. The second is international humanitarian law. The Geneva Convention is very, very clear on this. First, the hostage taker, because let's face it, the Palestinian population is being held hostage by Hamas in a manner of speaking, human shields, is completely illegal, and the illegality of that is 100% with Hamas. Second, it does not make any obligation on the opposite side to conform to hostage taking. They are allowed to shoot, well, it's not said you can shoot the hostage.
Right.
But it refuses to legislate on that, which means you can. It is not banned. Okay. So this part of international law is pretty damn clear. Let's be very clear about this.
ठीक है.
Okay. Now, the problem, of course, with interventionist judicial interventionism is you can keep coming up with new interpretations of things. This
Happens all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
But as per the current canon of jurisprudence, there is nothing illegal in what Israel is doing. It is exactly what America and the Allies did, and America, Russia, and the Allies did in
Berlin.
World War II.
Yeah.
It is the same as what we did in Bangladesh. It is,
So the point is to crush Hamas.
The point is to crush Hamas.
And crush it in a way that it's even there is no replication possible of this meme.
Exactly.
Right. And you don't think, because see, when I go to, well, okay, I know for a fact while I was not here and when Nasrallah was, there was protests in India by the Shia community. Not only that,
Let's caveat that peaceful protests.
Peaceful
there
protests.
was unlike the Sunni protests, there was no beheading, there was no stone pelting, nothing. It was peaceful protests.
I agree, right. But I also see when I go to American college campuses and meet all my friends, who are, frankly, America is hugely divided on this issue, especially the young population. And a lot of them fall on the side of, weirdly enough, Hamas. I went to Columbia University. I walked through the places that were occupied and made Hind Hall and all that nonsense, right? I feel like there is a subtle radicalization happening across the board for Muslims that we somewhat saw.
There's nothing subtle about it. It's a very open radicalization.
It's very possible.
Yeah.
But aren't you creating future problems? Is this not a strategic blunder where you're creating future problems? Because what I'm foreseeing is a West versus the Muslim world sort of conflict rising, coming out of this.
No. It was always a latent problem. The difference is it's become open now.
But it's still a progression.
It's a progression, sure.
Right.
But I don't see it. I see the progression as peripheral. I see it as an unsheathing of the problem. I'm not seeing the progression as much as you are. I'm seeing the unsheathing of the problem or the unmasking of the culprit much more emphatically, and peripheral progression, yes, but peripheral nevertheless.
And then there is also a loss of sort of public acceptance of Israel. Like at this point, I was in Mexico with my Israeli friend and I was constantly worried for how he's being seen. And I'm sure he is as well. I feel Israel overall is being seen. I think France has come out and said something about them attacking Lebanon or some stuff like that.
Okay, now look, France, we have to be very clear about French policy.
Right.
Till the 67 war, they were very pro-France. The French nuclear bomb, the Israeli nuclear bomb is a French gift. France actually colluded in smuggling nuclear material to them. Dimona and things like that, the nuclear reactor was French.
Right.
Their initial designs were French. Their initial fissile material was French and everything like that. The Suez campaign was an Anglo-French campaign with the Israelis were
Cooperative.
50% partners, joint venture tha, etc., etc. Then the French realized, this was after de Gaulle really brought in this whole whatever.
Modern French.
De Gaulle to a large extent, but it was post-Gaullist thing, really. They realized that they couldn't compete with America for weapon sales in the Arab world. So they came up with this policy where overall they will go with American policy, but we will have a very pro-Arab stance. And it became a very important thing for so-called non-aligned countries, which were mostly USSR supporting countries. France became, including India, it became their only supplier of Western quality weapons. So the East does quantity, USSR and China do quantity.
France and America do quality.
Quality.
Yeah.
And this was the only quality outlet that India and a lot of Middle Eastern countries have. And the French, in commercial interest, reoriented their policies after the 67 war. It was a purely commercial thing. They couldn't piggyback on the Anglo-American alliance for oil concessions to them because it was a language-based Five-Eye alliance between Canada, America, Britain, New Zealand and Australia. They obviously don't speak English in France. Therefore, they're feeling linguistically left out and things like that. So they came up with this policy which has suited them very, very well. They will not actively thwart Israeli interests or Israeli policy. They will make a lot of noise about it. They will create much more...
like public ha-ha hoo-hoo.
Think of it almost like Jordan.
Okay.
Different version of Jordan like we discussed. Yeah.
So, and I mean, you said a lot of words that might might not register. Your audience is pretty smart. But what I'm understanding is France says vocally we'll say something else. But fundamentally, it boils down to the strategic interests in weapon supply and so on. Yeah, right. And what I also realize a lot of this, because I work in media and I know how perceptions are manufactured, and I tell this to my American friends all the time. I'm like, tum log, you are pawns in a PR battle.
Yes.
Right? The actual decision making is purely strategic, and then a moral reason is invented around it that is given to guys like us to push it out to you so that you fight and decide between yourselves who is right and wrong. But really the hand of fate moves with strategy, not with morality. That is fundamentally what happens in most of these cases. So that is what is happening with France, and you're saying that is what is happening with the rest of the world in some sense as well, right? This situation with Iran.
And why is the left-wing media taking on all of this? Firstly, they whitewash Muslim radicalism.
Right.
Even though Muslim radicals are extreme right-wing technically, because of intersectionality.
Which is a confused philosophy.
This is the sort of queer Muslim alliance.
Right. Which makes no sense.
Which is chickens for KFC.
It's, right. Kitchens for KFC. I see
Not
that. It's a very
kitchens,
confused. Chickens, right. It's a very confused philosophy. I was going back to this Iran issue. Do you think Iran's proved that the Iron Dome is fallible with this last ballistic attack?
Long back. I've been tweeting about this since 2021, I think. Where, what was happening was because initially, 99% of all these rockets would fail. Only 1 or 2 would actually come. So you only had to expend 1 or 2 rockets because the Israelis have precise knowledge of where it's going to land.
Right.
So they only target the ones which are going to go on population centers or infrastructure or critical infrastructure. But this precisioning of Hezbollah rockets was already turning the tide. There were times, if you look at my Twitter timeline, in fact, I have been marking out the times since 21-22 where entire batteries of Iron Dome ran out because of saturation attacks.
And that's still a susceptibility in the Israeli defense.
It's now a susceptibility, which is why they're moving ahead with laser.
Achha, so they're evolving in that way?
They're evolving in that way because laser is much cheaper. It's a few dollars per shot.
Right.
It's a chemical laser. I think it's a chemical laser, but it's a few dollars per shot as opposed to $80,000 a missile, and it can take down hundreds of missiles per minute. So that I think when we reach a workable directed energy weapon, it will be by Israel precisely because of this problem. And that is how technology works. So, one of my favorite books, my favorite author is Ian Morris, and War, What Is It Good For? Well, everything. All that is good about humanity has actually come out of war, not
because
of
the necessity produces innovation at a faster pace.
Yes.
Right. So you're saying that the reason why none of these missiles ever actually landed on any civilian, or like there was no deaths as a function of this?
No, there have been a few.
Right. Like not as sort of, it's not a huge
Not
number.
as much as you would think.
Because the Iron Dome is still working to that effect.
Exactly.
But you think now Israel is
Not just Iron Dome. See, it's a triangle.
Right.
Early warning, plus Iron Dome, plus civil defense, plus infrastructure. So, every hotel or building in Israel has to have a safe room.
Right.
Which is safe from
Everything.
Rocket shrapnel and, you can't be safe from everything.
No, but like also the debris.
More or less.
Yeah, right.
Okay. And this time when we were in Israel, twice there were rockets and we had to run through the safe room, which is the stairwell. So the way skyscrapers are built in Israel is there's an extremely strong core built, which is where the lifts and the staircases are. So every floor can within 10 to 15 seconds run into the shelter of the stairwell.
Whoa.
Right. So if you zoom out a bit, Ansh. So here, see, this is the central secure structure going up. See, there's absolutely no windows or whatever. There's just entry doors out there. This is heavily reinforced concrete. If you go here, it's almost 5-6 feet thick with multiple layers in between. I don't know. I'm not an engineer, so I don't know what those layers are.
Right.
But it's obviously to diffuse the effect even of a direct rocket hit. And the building is built completely around it. So on the outside, it will look like a modern glass building. But on the inside, it is all reinforced, multiple layers of reinforced concrete, possibly even Kevlar and things, because I've only seen it at the construction stage, not at the material stage. So I can't, and they don't let you go in when the
Construction's happening.
When the central part of the construction is happening anyway. Not that they let you in even in a normal building site because it's a high danger site. But
This is where you're supposed to run when the bombs
This is
come.
so see, it's a combination of things: early warning,
Right.
the civil security drill, the Iron Dome, and the structures that have built in every single house in Israel that minimize casualties.
Do you think Israel is going to use this last attack by Iran to now go after Khamenei? Because it feels like this is this octopus terminology that is used, na, ki we eliminated Qasem Soleimani like 2 years ago.
I think they will, or they may not. I'll tell you what the pros and cons are. The problem of leadership elimination is that it usually brings about the survivors who are much more radical and they have survived. So it's almost like selection of the fittest
But in a radical direction.
in a radical direction.
Which means worse.
Which is why Hassan Nasrallah was much, much more dangerous for Israel than his predecessor was. On the other hand, sometimes if you decapitate the leadership, the whole thing can just fall apart. Now, in India, generally, we're of the belief that don't remove something unless you know what comes in its stead. The Israelis are more or less of that belief till push comes to shove. So this is the classic thing: peace targeting versus war targeting. Your priorities shift, and at that point, I think they generally avoid leadership targeting because leadership targeting means your own leadership then becomes a legitimate target. But here's the point: we've had the case of the Israeli who was arrested on the payroll of Iran, who was hired specifically for assassinating the defense minister and the prime minister. So I don't know how the Iranians thought this would work, especially in a heavily securitized state like Israel. But whatever, they did. So the principle of leadership targeting has already been established by Iran.
I think Iran's also desperate because for like months they've been saying we'll go at you, we'll go at you, we'll go at you, and they don't. And even when they did this time, it seemed very ineffective. I feel Iran's in a sort of a losing situation, but I also feel what Israel's best hope right now is to cause a civil revolution. I think you see...
Which is not going to happen. Let's be clear about this.
You don't think so?
I don't think so at all. I think these are pipe dreams by the Israelis. The Israelis genuinely believe this. You see, because, this is the thing. Even on Twitter, you keep seeing these images of women in swimming costumes in Tehran in the 70s or 60s or 50s.
And then there is a burqa image juxtaposed next
This
to
is
it.
like believing that Prithviraj Road or Malabar Hills or Boat Club in Chennai are somehow representative of Indian society. Okay. What happens there does not happen in Dharavi. What happens in Malabar Hills is not representative of Dharavi, which has probably 100 times the population,
or even
100,000
Nashik,
times.
right? Like you can say,
Exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't
Right.
extrapolate.
The level of mullahcracy control in Iran is on every single street. The local mullah keeps tabs. He's everybody's friend. He's actually quite compassionate, by the way.
Right?
He will not always side with a man in a divorce case or whatever.
Right.
He builds up social trust, but he also keeps tabs on that particular street, which feeds up the chain of the mullahcracy. There's a separate police surveillance mechanism and a Iranian Revolutionary Guard surveillance mechanism, which is at a slightly higher level, but they also keep tabs at the lower. Possibly. I mean, it's impossible to tell this thing, but there is a police network and a mullah network. They all fuse information at some level up there, and they are very, very good with keeping this stuff down. They have crushed lots of mass protests in the past. And see, the Shah ultimately got kicked out because he refused to fire on his own people.
Because when the people came at him in 79, he refused to attack them.
He refused to attack them.
So he flew. He fled, yeah.
He fled. He couldn't bring himself to kill his own people. Not in those numbers at any rate. One or two, fine. But killing hundreds of thousands of people, not an option on the table. With these guys, regime survival is everything. Everybody was going to say Assad was going to go, Assad was going to go, Assad is going to get toppled in Syria.
Right.
It never happened because he was quite determined to hold on to power. Even when the Americans triggered the Kurdish rebellion and the Shia rebellion in Iraq, Saddam Hussein crushed both of them and re-established control. you have to understand, these people, their drive to stay in power is enormous. If you think, which is not to say you shouldn't try, maybe,
Right.
but for all those dumb Indians who, go around supporting the Shah was a nasty little piece of shit. He was very anti-India. He supported Pakistan in the 65 war, and again in the 71 war. So it was the Shah was no friend of Iran. I don't know why Indians fall for this Western bullshit about how great the Shah was. The Shah going was very good news for India. Incidentally, Iran is Mullah Iran is probably better for India than Shah Iran was. To a combination of, it probably wouldn't have been, but the way the Shia-Sunni divide played out,
Right.
especially with regards to Pakistan, then affected our policy.
Right.
So, this is one of those things where a change of regime in Iran may not necessarily, it could be, but it may not necessarily be in India's interests.
Because the Iranian, the Persian population is largely unhappy.
I don't know if it's largely unhappy.
That's what I hear. Do you hear that?
I also hear that the large percentage of the Indian population is unhappy and wants Modi out.
Right.
I'm not going to trust
I
those
see what you mean.
sources. You see, so it may be a confirmation bias.
Right.
We are all subjected to confirmation bias, sure. But I see lots of gripes when I'm in Iran. Is it ever at revolution point? I don't know. Because remember, even sanctioned countries develop sanctions economies, which are highly skewed. They don't follow market dynamics and market laws and things like that. But they survive. You can lead a very good life in Iran.
Right.
There was a time, I think, in 14-15, where
Things were bad.
things were bad. Prior to that, I think it was 14-15, maybe. Just before the signing of the Iran nuclear deal. Where it was a genuine popular revolt. Because right now, when the Western press tells you, oh, the reformist president has been elected. Reformist, bro. This guy, Musavi, who was considered reformist or whatever, he was the bloody home minister under, some deputy home minister or something under, or secure, whatever.
Some minister.
Equivalent to a home minister in Ayatollah Khomeini's time. And I remember the first thing landing in Tehran in the old airport, not the new Mehrabad airport, the older airport near the nuclear facility, was that if the first roundabout that I came outside the airport, there were 3 people hanging from a crane.
Whoa.
Yeah. And, in India, we do the long drop method of hanging, which is it snaps your neck instantly.
Right.
You are dead even before you know it because the drop snaps your neck.
Right.
If it is too long, it completely decapitates you. That's how powerful a very long drop can be.
Whoa.
In a lot of Eastern Europe, they use the short drop method, which is much more painful because it
Asphyxiates you.
partly breaks your neck, but not enough. So you'll actually see in the execution, in a lot of Czech execution of Nazis, they use the short drop where an officer always holds a kerchief of some kind over the
Nose or face.
executee's face.
Right.
And it's kind of a combination of strangulation and this thing.
Right.
The Iranian method is the lift method, which is none. You are put and the crane is slowly lifted up. So you're literally strangled to death.
Whoa.
Right?
Whoa.
Yeah. So,
That's intense.
yeah, that's intense. I didn't see the hanging. I just saw the
hung.
hung.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, give me a break. This was, like Pakistan may, this guy is the anti-establishment candidate. उधर सब establishment candidate होते हैं, सब ISI के टे होते हैं, ठीक है ना? तो it's like that out there. सभी मुल्ला के टे होते हैं. They're all basically, it's a round robin going. So this, protests in favor of the reformist candidate. Like a reformist.
Right.
But that was one I forget the exact time. If I go back to my Twitter timeline, I'll be able to find it. But I think it was either 13 or 14 or something like that, where it was actual genuine protests on the street. Okay.
I've also heard the national mood of Iran is generally complaining and sadness. And so that's the base state in which these people exist in some way. Right? Like they're not going to act on it. That's how they just...
Let's put it this way. They're not as melancholy and dark as the Russians are.
Sure.
I mean, there's so many jokes about it. Like literally, anything you read about Russia, man, Tolstoy, Turgenev,
Dostoevsky.
anything.
Yeah.
It's like so dark, right?
There's no hope. Everything is going into the ground, right?
I mean, if BDSM became a country, it would be Russia.
That's a very good way of putting it. I like it. Yeah.
Right. I mean...
now I get your humor. Yeah, it's very funny.
It is, right?
Yeah. It's very
But it's not for
intelligent also.
everybody.
No,
It's not for everybody. It's not being human.
Only our audience.
It's not being human level or Ravish Kumar audience, low income group audience ka this thing. It's, yeah.
Right. So we were, the question sent
because,
to
BDSM itself is evolved sex. It's intelligent sex in that sense. So it's, where you've found all your kinks and then you want to explore some more kind of thing. So it's like, it's
real sex according to you.
It's high disposable income sex, I guess.
Amiro ka sex, basically.
Amiro ka sex, that's it.
So the question was effectively, is Khamenei's life in danger now?
I think so, yes.
Yeah.
I think Khamenei stands in a real chance of danger. And the fact that the Israelis are refusing to share their targeting list with the Americans means that I feel the only reason they're not sharing the targeting list with the Americans is because they intend to go at the nuclear facilities.
And you don't think that will trigger a bigger cascade from there? If Khamenei is eliminated, you're eliminating a head of a state.
So let's talk about this realistically.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's assume the worst case scenario, which might be the best case scenario from the Israeli point of view, not from my point of view, but anyway. Khamenei is killed, most of the Guardian Council are killed, most of the IRGC leadership are killed, and the nuclear facilities are bombed. This is the high option, the absolute high option on the table. Okay, in addition to oil facilities and things, which are no longer important because of what has happened to the IRGC, Khamenei, and the nuclear facilities. What can Iran realistically do? Iran tried in April, they tried again this month. What did they achieve?
I don't know. I think it's an internal collapse.
Precious
at that point.
little.
Yeah.
It's not internal collapse. We need to understand that your offensive ability outside your border or lack thereof does not mean your loss of internal control.
Sure.
We need to remember there's a long-range war. The distance between Tehran and Tel Aviv is 1,500 kilometers. Even at the closest point of the border, it's about 1,200 kilometers or so. So, this is not a place where regime change can only change with the ground troops.
Right.
Which is not in play out here. You can probably do it from the air if you have a sustained air campaign with aircraft carriers, which Israel does not have. Okay? So, what ends up happening is, assume Khamenei and the IRGC and the nuclear facilities are taken out, or at least the leadership. Plus the Guardian Council, so you don't have a replacement. At that point, Iran sits down and thinks, what can I do? The only option is to build a nuclear device now. Okay? Now, it wants to build a nuclear device. How are you going to get to the nuclear materials that have been bombed? See, you don't actually have to bomb the underground facility. Okay? If you bomb the entrances to that facility, you essentially entomb the facility.
Right.
At that point, remote facility access from Israel becomes fairly easy because you can pick up on digging, you can pick up on who's trying to access it or not, and just keep bombing the areas where they're trying to access it.
Theek. So you can control the facility from a remote distance. Yeah.
From what we've seen of Israeli capabilities so far,
right.
You can. Okay. The other question is, what about radiological fallout into the atmosphere? Now, first, if it's a deep underground facilities and if the bunker busters manage to go in, they actually demonstrated that with Nasrallah. Nasrallah thought he was very protected
in a bunker
somewhere in Beirut, and clearly it wasn't because it went very deep inside. And the pressure of the gas expansion acts like a hammer, right? It's literally making bharta out of you before you know it.
So it's not actually the bomb, it's the gas that pressures outwards from the bomb.
It's partially the bomb, but it's mostly the pressure out from the bomb.
That just squishes you.
That squishes you. And it could have a third thermobaric effect, which is fuel air, where you've injected the entire area where the pressure has spread with flammable gas, which then ignites and you're burnt inside out.
Whoa.
You're simultaneously burnt inside out and outside in.
Damn, modern warfare, huh?
Yeah, modern warfare, bro.
Wow.
So if Nasrallah didn't, remember, you don't need to get through the entire... See, it may start at, say, 30 meters. And it can go right up to about 100, 200 meters. A bit much, but dangerous. But anyway, go up to 100, 200 meters. The thing is, you don't have to target the entire 100, 200 meters. If you've created enough pressure on the top meters and entombed it, you've essentially killed out the rescuable layers, and the other layers you've entombed. Your nuclear program is not the materials really, it's the people who make it.
Right. It's the intelligence behind it.
It is the intelligence behind it.
Right.
Once that is killed, it becomes very, very difficult. Okay. Retrieving the material becomes difficult. Now, in case of reactor domes, which are the overground facilities, unko agar tum blow up karoge, one of the things that the Israelis have been working very hard on is penetrating the reinforced dome of a reactor, creating the pressure reaction inside the reactor without collapsing the dome.
Huh. That's very tricky.
It is
Sounds
very
very
tricky.
tricky,
It is very tricky. It's very precise. You understand the kind of
aerodynamics and like the
thermodynamics and everything you have to work with is it is
a
tricky.
modern marvel, it sounds like.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Nasty, but marvel nevertheless. Once you've done that, you've more or less contained the radiological fallout as well. Remember when they attacked the Iraqi Osirak nuclear reactor in 1981 or 2 or 80, 81, 82 is 3 saal mein kabhi hua hai. The entire dome collapsed, but that was before the reactor even went critical. They attacked the Syrian reactor, the secret North Korean reactor that Syria was building, even before it went critical. But Iranian reactors are all functional. So
It's more tricky.
It's trickier because you have to contain all the radiological
Material.
dust and everything inside, right?
Yeah.
Some might escape, but not enough to...
Cause a radiological fallout.
Yeah, let's see what happens, because I think at that point access control is they'll be looking through satellites to see anytime a car or whatever goes in. And if they've killed off all the Iranian air defenses, all you need is a drone somewhere in the sky just shooting one small missile at any car entering, at any people entering or whatever.
Anyone coming close, right? Anyone trying to
Right.
do, yeah.
And at that point, I don't know what the de-escalation... See, I've always been told you don't escalate unless you have a plan to de-escalate.
Right.
ठीक है इसीलिए मैं that failed in the case of Odisha in my case, but the de-escalation ladder. But
Right.
But I don't know if your viewers got the joke, but anyway, you did.
I do. I know.
you did.
I get the joke.
Yeah, and Ansh did also.
And then all your core viewers get the joke.
Yeah, they get the joke.
Right.
But what happens is, does Israel have a de-escalation? I'm more interested in the de-escalation plan than in the escalation plan.
Because the escalation is fairly straightforward, barring a few technical...
Yeah. So, for example, if you and I divorce,
Okay.
and I decide to punch you in the face, you're a hatta-gata honorary jat. You'll wallop the living daylights out of me.
Right.
Now, I could run away from here, but I'm a fat bald so I can't even outrun you.
Right.
Okay.
So what's the plan after you punch me, is what you're getting at.
Exactly.
Right. How are you calming the situation?
So how am I calming the situation? So my thing would be to go tell my transportation executive down below, Bhaiya gaadi taiyar rakho. Okay. And he will be revving the car up. I will go down and then I will yell maa baap ki gali at you and things that really
Rile me up.
Put the stiletto through your ribs.
Right.
And then get in the car and run away.
Right.
Because you can't outrun my car. Okay? Because I can see you drive a Jatmobile, also known as a Fortuner.
What do you drive? Or what does he drive, whoever's driving you?
I don't drive, sweetie. I get driven around.
We are getting lost. So we were talking about the de-escalation plan. How do you get out of the Chakravyuh? And Israel doesn't seem to have that to your understanding.
They never get into anything without a de-escalation plan, by the way.
They're very smart
They're
people.
very systematic about things, right? They do, but I want to know how much of it is based on presumptions, like there will be a revolution, which I discount. See, this is where your assessments go. So, we don't do predictions, we do assessments. And one of the things is, in my line of business, an assessment, if you get 60% assessments right, you're a genius.
That's super success.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get 80-90% right, in which case you're God.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But it's called risk management for a reason, because there's a huge amount of risk in these assessments. We don't do predictions. If anyone tells you he's a prediction, tell him Jyotish karna shuru kar.
I know several people who do predictions, by the way. You probably do them, and as well. They have a de-escalation plan, or so we think, and a lot of it might be based on assumption, and that assumption might be wrong, and that could lead to further graver consequences. And this is the highest possible case for Israel in this escalation situation.
Correct.
What's the best case scenario for India? Or for that matter, what's a natural end to this war, and what's the best case scenario for India?
A natural end to this war might be a fizzle out. A naam ke vaste retaliation by Iran, which doesn't produce any results necessitating
Response from Israel.
Another response from Israel.
They're like, marne do, ye to bhonk rahe hain ab.
Ab bhonk rahe hain.
Haan.
And the best result for India is हमारा रिश्ता बरकरार रहे
सबके साथ.
सबके साथ.
India सिर्फ अपने, we don't get along with our neighbors, but everyone else in the world, India, and we have great foreign relations.
Nobody gets along well with neighbors. क्योंकि तू मेक्सिको का दामाद है, I'll quote a Mexican to you.
हाँ. गाली बन गई मेक्सिको के दामाद. हाँ.
पर तू है ना मेक्सिको का दामाद.
In the process, हाँ.
साला illegal immigrant कहीं का. और उसमें क्या है कि there was a very famous, I don't think he was a great guy, but anyway, Benito Juarez, who was the president of the airport is named after him. Since you've been there, you'll know. Who was the first native Indian to become as a Native American Indian, not feather, not dot.
Right.
To become president. And he's incidentally the guy after whom Benito Mussolini is named.
Oh,
his parents named him Benito after Benito Juarez.
I didn't know that. Yeah.
So that's President Benito Juarez of Mexico. Unfortunately, he didn't do human sacrifices. If he had done human sacrifices, I would have liked him.
You would have more respect
old
for him.
Aztec style. Take an obsidian blade, open up the rib cage.
For people that don't, that's how they did it, bro. The obsidian blades you can still buy in Mexico.
You can still buy.
Yeah.
Can you bring me an obsidian blade?
I can ask her. Yeah, I'll ask Cloud to bring
And
one.
I want an obsidian blade with a Huitzilopochtli on the this thing. I don't want a Quetzalcoatl one because those are fake. There were no human sacrifices allowed to Quetzalcoatl. It was only to Huitzilopochtli, and that's...
I can't pronounce the name, but Quetzalcoatl is a god figure.
Is the feathered serpent.
Yeah, right.
So the Aztecs, the Mayas used to sacrifice to Quetzalcoatl, but the Aztecs did not sacrifice to Quetzalcoatl. Not human sacrifices.
Right.
They did jaguar and other sacrifices, but not human sacrifices. But Huitzilopochtli and people like that were very exuberant human sacrifices.
Yeah, I was in Teotihuacan. They were showing us where they would do it and stuff too.
We don't know if the Teotihuacanos sacrificed to this. They probably did to the feathered serpent and things like that.
Right.
Because remember, the Teotihuacanos were not Aztec. It was it was roughly equivalent to the Gupta Empire in India, around 400 AD. And we don't know them because they never had a script. As opposed to Tenochtitlan, which is Mexico City, which is the Aztec sacrifices. But
so
yes.
obsidian blades, Benito Juarez, and you were making a point.
This lovely guy, he had this lovely phrase that he used for America. That Mexico's great tragedy was that it was so far from God and so close to America. Right?
It's true.
And every small country has that with relation to a big country.
Who's a neighbor?
Especially a neighbor, but even an economic neighbor in that sense. So, for example, with India, Indira Gandhi used to keep talking about the hidden hand and the foreign hand and this and that. She was referring to America because anything that used to go wrong here, let's blame America for
Right.
it. So, all the smaller countries blame us for everything around us.
Nepal, Bangladesh,
Yeah,
all of it.
there's nothing you can do about it,
Right.
right? This is
Just how it works.
just how it works.
It's
right?
power dynamics at the end of it. Yeah.
I'm sure if you go ask all of Mukesh Bhai's neighbors around Antilla, they'll also be saying the same thing. हमारा इधर पानी नहीं आता है, सब Antilla को चला जाता है, electricity नहीं आता है, सब Antilla को चला जाता है, whatever. They will also complain about this. It's the classic power dynamic gripe.
Right.
ठीक है.
So you were answering the question natural end to the war and then best case for India.
Best case for India is I'm not really seeing how we get drawn into any of this.
I don't see it either. Unless Kashmir is somehow provoked.
Kashmir is not going to be provoked under any circumstance.
Not from Pakistan.
Not from this set. No, Pakistan might do it independently of something else.
Okay.
But not as a fallout, not as a direct fallout of this.
Okay.
Okay. Maybe some terrorist is created as a result who becomes a great Shia terror leader and restarts. Third, fourth order consequences. हो सकता है.
Yeah, right.
But first and second order consequences.
नहीं होगा.
नहीं. At least that's my assessment for now. I don't do predictions, by the way. Yeah.
And the natural end to this entire situation with Iran, I understand if they're not strong enough and they're ignorable. But what about Palestine and what about Gaza? What is the natural end to that part of the conflict? Because it's like a constant itch.
What I suspect what you're going to see with Gaza is post-war Germany.
So huge guilt about Hamas and so on.
Not
Hamas becomes third right.
I don't look the way how radicalized they are. I don't think there's going to be any huge amount of guilt out there. But what is going to happen is it's going to be a much more hands-on sort of Israeli proxy administration. Which is going to be very strict on security, no radicalization, literature, this, that, strict control on schools, what they teach, what narabazi you can do. Quite different from Germany in that sense. But there will be a multi-billion dollar reconstruction program where Gaza will be rebuilt. And in a much more security manageable way, and none of the borders, neither the sea borders nor the land borders, the Philadelphia corridor or the coast, will the Palestinians be allowed any control of. That will come under Israeli control, right? Because the root of the problem here is that, and so you'll see that kind of an administration basically.
Right. Okay. And how long? Because it's already been a year. What do you think? 1 more year? 2 more year? Shorter?
Look, right now it's mostly mopping up operations. Though the main guy Yahya Sinwar is still hiding somewhere in. He's so scared now. He's worried about his personal safety. He's saying I'm not negotiating for a ceasefire because I'm worried about my personal safety. Because if I start negotiating, they'll kill me. They'll find me and kill me.
Really?
Yeah.
And you know this credibly. You're not just saying this because you know this rumors.
It's been it's reported.
Whoa. So it's now personal interest over collective interest.
And the Hezbollah leadership, the current so-called leader, because the moment the leadership, the joke doing the rounds here now is selecting the Hezbollah leader is like selecting the Pope. You'll see a plume of smoke go up every time the leader is announced.
But isn't there middle management dysfunctional now with the pagers?
It's stopped.
Yeah.
Hezbollah, you remember in the 2006 war, Hezbollah gave a really, जो हिंदी में कहते हैं मुंह तोड़ जवाब to the Israelis. Okay, tactically at least on the ground. Strategically it was a failure, but tactically it was a
strong attack.
Israel actually counts the 2006 campaign as a failure. We're just not seeing the kind of casualties and things like that we saw in the first in the 2006 war, right? You can see the dysfunction.
It's a much more technological war. It's a much more Israel.
It's actually a less technological war. And so Israel keeps making this mistake that they keep falling back on technology instead of humans. They learned the lesson very badly on the 7th of October. They're not making that mistake. So it's all human focus at the moment. They did it in 2006 as well. It was too much on high tech. My tank will have these passive defense systems and active defense systems, and it didn't work. So they've learned, at least for now, they've learned their lesson.
Right. Play the Andrew Schulz clip. I want to know what you think about this. You've seen this, no?
हाँ, ये मैंने tweet भी किया था.
Yeah.
Modi, India.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine. He's great. He's the nicest.
India.
Yeah.
This is for you.
Oh, good. Well, I'll tell you. Do you like him or not?
Yeah.
Do you like him?
I have family on both sides of it.
Okay,
I have
well,
family
let me
that
tell
loves
you.
everything and family
I'll just
that's
tell
not.
you, though. You need him. I know. Well, they had, before him, they were replacing him every year. It was very unstable. He came along.
He's in a
and
lot of
he's
infrastructure.
great. He's a friend of mine.
Ek minute
On the
pause karna.
outside, he looks-
Who were they replacing every year? I think that's just Trump nonsense, na?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
So-
just Trump gibbering. Haan, theek hai.
But the thing really is, before Modi, we didn't really have a prime minister. We had a shadow prime minister.
Right.
The real cabinet was the NAC, the national. What was it? I've even forgotten what it was. It was the supra cabinet.
Okay.
Um,
And so you're saying all cabinet ministers were kind of shadow ministers? There was shadow ministers on top of them?
yeah,
Okay. For all of them?
for all of them.
So like if A Raja is telecom, then somebody else is
Of course,
managing him from the
the
top.
NAC was the real cabinet,
Uh-huh.
which is completely unaccountable, unquestionable, whatever. You had that fraud called Gendres on it as well, who basically, for an alleged food economist, he doesn't seem to know the difference between malnourishment and food security. He brought in a carbohydrate security program and called it the food security program.
So there's no nutrient distribution.
Zero
Effectively.
nutrients. It was basically carbohydrates.
Right.
Okay. And for a country that has such a severe stunting problem and a malnourishment problem,
Right.
to put a third-rate fraud, I mean, the fellow himself looks like a famine victim.
Okay. Who's this first fellow?
To put a malnourished skeleton like that on, he's a cheap little Belgian, Jola Wala, who's decided he's an Indian citizen. Unfortunately, he's an Indian citizen.
Oh, he is also. Okay.
Unfortunately. He looks like one of King Leopold's victims in the Congo, really. The white version of it. Bhai, pehle put on some fucking weight yourself before you talk about nutrition.
Right. Or ask
But then,
Abhijit for it. Huh.
to not know about the malnourishment problem, to not know about the stunting problem,
Right.
and come around giving carbohydrates as food security, the bastard needs to be locked up in jail. Instead, what has he done? He's put in a supra cabinet position of the National Advisory Committee. That's what it was called.
Okay. Okay.
Okay.
There seems to be some sense, like, because even if he's saying gibberish, it's not without fact that probably the liaison from
He's got the it's factually incorrect what he said.
Right.
Let's be clear about that.
Right.
But he's kind of
In the right zone.
in the right zone in the kind of instability, because
right.
you never knew who was in power, who was manipulating what.
Yeah.
Because it was such a minority government that
Yeah.
the allies could exert a huge amount of pressure on everything that the government did.
Right.
But I have undiminished respect for Manmohan Singh, because the one time it really counted, which was the India-US nuclear deal, he put his foot down and he
Made it
was.
happen.
This is why you will never find me abusing Manmohan Singh on any channel, anywhere, anything. That man has my undiminished respect for the India-US nuclear deal. Okay? It was very crucial we got that, and he did it. He staked the cabinet on it. And full marks to Sonia Gandhi. Because it was her political power that got that thing through. Subsequent actions, I have a lot of criticism. But for that, I think Sonia Gandhi was a true patriot for doing that for India, and
Manmohan Singh
was.
Nicest.
Go back a little bit.
Total killer.
Go back a little bit.
Because I,
Yeah,
you
sir.
like
I have family on both sides of it.
Okay,
I have
well,
family
let me
that
tell
loves
you.
everything and
I'll
family
just
that's
tell you,
not.
though. You need him. I know. Well, they had, before him, they were replacing him every year. It was very unstable. He came along.
He's in a
and
lot of
he's
infrastructure.
great. He's a friend of mine. But on the outside, he looks like he's your father. He's the nicest. Total killer. Because I asked him,
Yeah.
we're talking, we did a thing called Howdy Modi in Houston, Texas.
Oh, yeah.
And they filled up the stadium. It was me and him.
Yeah.
We filled up the stadium. It was beautiful. Like 80,000 people. It was going crazy. And we're walking around today. Maybe I wouldn't be as, maybe you wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
We're walking in the middle, waving to everybody. Anyway.
That's
but
funny.
We have
Yeah.
a very good relationship. He's the nicest human being. But we had a couple of occasions where somebody was threatening India. I said,
Yeah.
let me help. I'm very good with those people. Let me help. I will do it, but I will do it, and I will do anything necessary. We've defeated them for hundreds of years.
Wow.
He was talking about a certain country. Okay?
Yeah.
You can probably guess.
Yeah.
This is very funny. This is very funny. Are they talking about
Whoa,
Pulwama?
what happened
What do you
there?
think they're talking about?
They're talking about Pulwama and the Balakot strikes that happened after that. But the thing really is, this is the standard line of every Indian Prime Minister as well.
I will do it.
I will do it. I do not need help from you.
It's not just Modi.
It's not just Modi. Indira Gandhi, for example, she was crystal clear, I am going to destroy Pakistan, and she did that. You know, the problem is we consider Nehru the foreign policy god. It was Indira Gandhi who was the foreign policy goddess,
How?
not Nehru. Nehru was a dunce. The daughter was sublime, and she had an instinctive feel for certain things. Sure, in certain things she rubbed the Americans the wrong way unnecessarily maybe, but I don't think she was essentially bandaging a wound that her father had created with America. It wouldn't have riled so much had it not been for Nehru's antecedents. She was a superb diplomat, and she was very clear, I will defend India. Not America, not Russia, I. Okay? Then, the same thing happened during Kargil. Okay? And Kargil mein kya hua tha ki Nawaz Sharif, after the fighting had intensified, Nawaz Sharif went to Moscow, and Bill Clinton was very eager to negotiate a peace between India and Pakistan. So they invited Atal Bihari Vajpayee to come to Washington. He said, no, I have to stay here and defend my country. We did not ask them for help. We did not ask Russia for help. Yes, we asked Israel and France for ammunition and things. I will stay. We do not do peace treaties sponsored by third parties.
Yeah, because you become a little bit of a, like, you lose power in that
You
process.
lose power in that process, right?
And it's an act of weakness overall.
It is an act of weakness.
And when Pakistan's clearly a weaker state, why would we do that?
Why would we do that?
Right.
And in this, Modi was sticking to the Indian policy line, which is, you know, I will not accept third-party negotiation. It has been done to us. I will screw them over. You are nobody to come and interfere in our... But this has been the standard Indian foreign policy line, that we do not accept American mediation or any kind of mediation in a bilateral dispute. What is between India and Pakistan will stay between India and Pakistan.
Right.
Okay. And it shows you, these people keep saying, oh, he's destroyed foreign policy, whatever. Everything about his foreign policy is continuity with greater profession. I would classify Modi's foreign policy and security policy as continuity with greater professionalism. You don't have the kind of loose cannons that Nehru nursed. Indira Gandhi, by the way, brought a certain professionalism into it.
Right.
Vajpayee did too. But they couldn't control a sort of erratic cabinet. And remember, in those days, we were much weaker and much poorer.
Yeah.
India with a per capita income of $400-500, I don't know what it was during the Bangladesh war, is not in India with a per capita income of $2,000.
Yeah.
I think it's 2,900 now. It's almost edging. But I think us time 2,500 ya kuch tha Pulwama ke time.
Right.
We're not.
We're not the same.
We're not the same.
Yeah.
Okay. So you will see that happen. So, you know, this notion that somehow Modi is a disruptor, no. There is continuity, which is what breeds confidence. You know, countries can't change their policies on a swing. This is why Erdogan is a lunatic who nobody trusts.
Because he'll
Turkey
change
has-
himself very quickly.
Boss, he
Flips.
he's bipolar. He's schizo. He's certified schizo. Okay. Modi is not that. He's a very dependable, reliable guy. Jo bola wo hoga. And in that, he's got Jaishankar, who is able to deliver sharp messages without sharpness of words.
Jaishankar's exceptional.
Satyam vada, mishtham vada.
Sach bolo, meetha bolo.
Par meetha se bolo. So he does not get nasty like Menon used to under Nehru. Menon was despite all his education and whatever, he was a gutter snipe of the worst order. Okay.
Like, he could use words that would rile up people, in rub them in the bad way.
Rub them in a bad way. That is not what you want in a diplomat.
Yeah. A diplomat by definition.
Yes.
Right.
So Jaishankar is very good with that. He will deliver understand, there is no confusion in the messaging. It's a very clear message, but delivered in very sweet language that nobody can object to.
Yeah, you've not wounded the other person.
You've not wounded the other person.
It's
You've
a
not
very
made
exceptional
it
speaking style.
unnecessary. But remember, at that time, we were coming from a severe inferiority complex because we were so poor.
Yeah.
People have forgotten in India, we were living ship to mouth. We didn't become food self-sufficient till the 1970s.
Yeah.
We were on the verge of starvation unless we begged for food aid from America.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, it's a very different India now. Even in my lifetime, this is a very different
It's
India
a
now.
very different India. I mean, I've seen it. I mean, I'm 77 born.
Right.
I've seen it in my own thing, the increasing confidence and things like that. But the professionalism that Modi has brought in, this completely don't personalize foreign policy. Remember, all these countries had denied him a visa and called him a pariah and whatnot nonsense. He never personalized it. Whatever insults were thrown at him, उसने कबूल करके
Right.
ठीक है, जो था सो था.
Right.
Let's go forward from there. He has never personalized it.
That's a very interesting point.
Even with Pakistan, remember he visited Nawaz Sharif's ghar ka shadi and all of that. Nawaz Sharif was invited to the first swearing in 2014. And then he realized making peace with Pakistan is a waste of time. I have come with an absolute majority. I have come with a mandate to make peace. He demonstrated it with Bangladesh, where the enclave swap happened in his first term. And he said, I can do these things if we
It comes
can
down
agree.
to it. Yeah.
If it comes down to it, I've got the political capital to do it. Pakistan showed it was never serious about these things, which it has never been. And then he just cut it off so completely that Pakistan has stopped becoming वो जो सब वो Hindustan Times sponsored Aman Ki Asha या Times of India sponsored
Ah, right. Aman Ki
Asha
Asha used to be a thing,
वो
right?
अमन की तमाशा जो हम कहते हैं it's stopped now. Those jokers have stopped being able to make money. It's killed off the entire track to industry tamasha that was there, that was getting funding from all of this. So it's fine.
This clip got sent to me from someone yesterday. They found out I'm talking to you and they were like, you need to watch this. I was like, I'll watch it with Abhijit. Have you watched it?
Yeah, I couldn't get past the first about a minute or so because, I was waiting for a reaction to what I said.
Okay.
It's just a pastiche of other people, Modi, this one, Navika, Arnab, saying whatever. And there's no actual comeback.
So for people that are just listening, this is a video that Being Human, a YouTube channel, made when Abhijit went on Vinamra's show. I saw the first minute and a half and you can't say it's not funny.
I actually did not find it funny at all because these are clips I've seen in different forms on Twitter, which are just cut and pasted together.
Okay.
So I'm like, where's the originality? You can only put Arnab saying kuch bhi so many times and laugh at it. After the second time, it stops being funny.
We'll watch it. And I want you to
But
respond
then,
to
to be fair, this is a country that thinks Carrie Minati saying empathy for everything is funny. So I'm sure there is a certain demographic that finds it funny. So for example, the same Being Human guy, he, when I said Ravish has low income followers, which you can actually, how the diagnostics work. You can go in and check.
I will not insult people on the basis of their income.
Well, you should.
Tell me, continue. I'm just joking.
It's aspirational to insult people on the basis of income. You're encouraging them to become high income.
Oh my God. How do you live with yourself?
I do. I live very happily with myself. Thank you. But what ends up happening is his response to it was a clip saying, see, my followers may be low income, but they will die for me. They will do whatever I tell them to do and they trust me. Well, your followers are basically low-income fundamentalists. So he just admitted that they're both brain-dead and low-income. How is this a comeback?
Man, I want to live in your world, bro.
But I think with Ravish, it's, that low-income to lower middle-class mindset where this is some kind of a comeback apparently, which is perfectly fine. I guess अगर तुम महीने में 500 रुपए कमा रहे हो, that's the sort of scintillating comebacks you're used to.
I have a question before we actually start this. Do you think how much do you think your homosexuality influences your viciousness? Is there a correlation?
Maybe there is.
Yeah, because the sass is a very gay phenomena.
So I think it's not my homosexuality as such. I think it's my lack of physical prowess as such.
What does that mean?
If you get insulted as a hatta gata jat, tu to jat nahi hai, tu to baniya hai.
Aadha Bani, Aadha Punjabi.
But you kind of look jati.
I know.
So I mean, you have lots of jatitude.
Okay, I'll take it. I'll run with
So
it.
you know, it's if somebody insults you, you'll punch them.
Yeah.
So I was always a bullied kid in school, so I would get punched. And my comebacks would be the kind of nasty stuff that doesn't hit you in the face, it hits you here.
You kneecap their ego.
And you know, it was a very important phrase that taught me how to do that from the Tirukural, which is, you know, Thiruvalluvar, the great Tamil poet. Teenal sutra punai arum arade navinal sutra varum. Which is the wound inflicted by an arrow may heal, but the wound inflicted by words will never heal.
You took literally some of the greatest poets in this country and co-opted them for...
I co-opted
Online.
a lot of people. See, when I say first principles, I mean it. Because once I get a first principle into my head, it becomes an easy fix. This could be a negative. I see it as a net positive. But anyway, a lot of Schopenhauer, a lot of Tirukural, even a lot of Marx sometimes. I internalized it. And once I internalize it, I don't know how, but I've trained my mind to follow that set pattern. So I will never resort to physical violence, but my words will make you wish I had resorted to physical violence instead.
I know a lot of people on Twitter who agree. Can we play this video? Can we actually watch him get angry at being human?
सेल्फ प्रोक्लेम धमाकेदार एक्सपोजेस वाले पॉडकास्ट के रिलीज होने के अगले ही दिन मैंने अपने चैनल पे ये बैक टू बैक कमेंट्स पढ़े व्हिच एनकरेज मी टू वॉच दिस पॉडकास्ट इवन मोर बिकॉज दीस कमेंट्स मेंशन्ड कि वहां पर कुछ ऐसी बातें हुई है दैट रिलेट टू माय रीसेंट कॉपीराइट बैटल विद एएनआई जिसकी वजह से मेरा 1 मिलियन प्लस सब्सक्राइबर चैनल वाज ऑन द वर्ज ऑफ गेटिंग डिलीटेड फॉरएवर एंड दैट इज व्हाई
I have so much to say about this because hey, apparently I'm also a part of it.
और इसलिए contrary to the suggestion in the comments मैंने डिसाइड किया कि this podcast doesn't deserve a reaction. It deserves a proper detailed response. In other words,
ये हमारी जम के लेने वाला है.
Bro, yeah, you have to appreciate that. He put you against you there.
But a lot of people have used that in memes. So, you know, we encourage people to make memes about us
Right.
on Twitter, right? That's a very old one. So I'm like,
Oh, you don't find any originality in it?
look, he just keeps cutting paste. Like, yeah, it's like people who find Carrie Minati funny just for saying CBC, BDK and everything.
Well, okay, Carrie can be funny. But this is...
I've
up until last
I've
period,
literally never laughed at anything Carrie has ever said. I've just sat down, like I can't watch more than 2 minutes. I'm sitting thinking, you know, I could have shat during this period and that would have been a more productive use of my time. Like, seriously, dude.
Who do you think is funny? Which Indian comic do you find funny?
Native Indian comic?
Yeah,
None.
Indian comic. You don't find any... So you've probably not list because they're very funny people.
I'm sure there are.
Yeah.
It's look, there are 1 or 2 clips that are probably funny. Like that guy who made fun of sushi कि भाइयों अगर तुम sushi लाओगे हम उसको हरी चटनी के साथ तुमको बना के
Gaurav
दें.
did that.
Okay, हाँ.
Yeah, Gaurav Kapoor did that. क्यों विकासपुरी में sushi, that's the angle he's
So
playing.
that was really funny. Then 2-3 of Ayo Shraddha's clips were very funny.
Okay.
There was this one guy who did a spoof on Simple Sudha that was very funny.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Sudha Narayanamurthy.
Acha, okay.
But the rest of it, like,
don't
then I went and followed it. I was like,
Acha.
okay. But the Sudha Narayan. So, you know, it's like a restaurant menu. Any restaurant you go to, there'll be 2-3 standout dishes, and the rest will be very like mediocre. In a truly great restaurant, almost everything should be a standout, right? For me, that's the sign of a truly a great thing. So I'm sure everybody has 1 or 2 funny clips, but there's a question of oversaturation. You can't make the same joke over and over again.
Fair.
पर ये तो मैं करूंगा क्योंकि जिस वाहियात लेवल की कॉन्स्पिरेसी थ्योरीज तुम फैलाते हो वो इतनी बोगस और डेंजरस होती हैं कि उनका मजाक उड़ाना लीस्ट आई कुड डू
So, shall I start?
Yes.
तो आज मैं इन सारी बोगस थ्योरीज को तसल्ली से डिबंक करूंगा और इसीलिए ये वीडियो शायद थोड़ी लंबी हो सकती है तो
But
short
bro, this is me making fun of myself.
Yeah.
So how is it funny if somebody else does it?
I mean, you have to admit that humor can possibly be felt by other people that are not you, who don't necessarily have, like, for us, it's super entertaining. For people who are watching it, it's super entertaining. I'm pretty sure people will let us know in the comments if you think this is funny.
भाई तू ज्योतिष लोगों के साथ भी पॉडकास्ट करता है ना
नहीं,
अजीब
वो
अजीब
विनम्र
से।
है।
तो तेरा और मेरा क्वालिटी का बहुत बड़ा डिफरेंस है।
क्यों? मैं ज्योतिषों के साथ करूंगा तो हमारा क्वालिटी मैच रहेगा।
तू मैकडॉनल्ड्स खाने वाला है। आई वोंट बी कॉट डेड इन अ मैकडॉनल्ड्स।
No, मैं कभी मैकडॉनल्ड्स नहीं खाता मेरे भाई। But I'm also not going to Wasabi just so that, you know, I can
No,
post pictures.
I also don't go to Wasabi because Wasabi was a shitty bloody restaurant. It's emblematic of the complete collapse of the Tatas, but we'll come to later.
We'll talk about it later.
न्यूज लॉन्ड्री was exposed for running foreign funded narrative और मेरे जैसे पॉलिटिकल कमेंटेटर्स को भी एक्सपोज किया गया फॉर स्टीलिंग ANI का कॉपीराइटेड कंटेंट और इस स्टोरी में हमारा साथ देने के लिए YouTube को भी एक्सपोज किया गया और बताया गया कि कैसे YouTube has now fallen to a point
Where it needs to be smashed down, and some of its executives probably need to be spending some time in jail.
तो इस वीडियो में मैं ऐसी ही 4 घातक और घटिया कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरीज डिबंक करूंगा जो इस एक फैलाई गई। भाई के 2 गेस्ट थे, अभिजीत अय्यर मित्रा और ईशान प्रकाश। नाउ द फर्स्ट गेस्ट अभिजीत अय्यर मित्रा इज अ सीनियर फेलो एट द इंस्टीट्यूट ऑफ पीस एंड कॉन्फ्लिक्ट स्टडीज, बट ही इज बेटर नोन एज
Famous, dirty talker, sapiosexual. और उनके साथ जो गेस्ट हैं उनका नाम है
Ishan Prakash, who an employee has described as the Rahul Gandhi of ANI.
Oh my God.
ANI editor स्मिता
But
प्रकाश
yeah,
के बेटे
come on, bro.
ईशान
That's pretty funny.
प्रकाश is the editor of live services in his family business। और ANI के ऑफिस में लोग ईशान को देखकर उनसे अक्सर ये सवाल पूछ लेते हैं,
तू कौन है बे? तो तेरी क्या औकात है उधर बैठने के लिए? क्योंकि तेरा नाम है बस। Inherited privilege, accident of nature.
माँ भेंट कर दी यार।
तो चलो शुरू करते हैं इन्वेस्टिगेट।
You are laughing. You are laughing at this. No? You don't think this is funny?
यार, you can extrapolate anything. How does it become funny?
Damn, bro. Hey, you don't take jokes well on yourself.
I take jokes very well. Have you seen the kind of shit that comes at us from the Kushal Mehra show?
Or the Sham Sharma show, which one?
Charvaka podcast and this one.
Huh.
We actually encourage people to make fun of us,
Right.
right? We run memes on ourselves. And some of them are very nasty and we love them, right? But they're original, you understand? See, I don't find... how do I put this?
How can being human make it funnier? What would you tell him if he's watching right now? Or she, I don't know.
Really sarcastic commentary. Don't juxtapose. Okay, so to be fair, I'm sure this will sell 20 million views. But I come from the school that finds, for me, the most hilarious thing I have ever seen in my life is Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister.
These are British comedies from back in the day.
Are you serious? You don't know Yes
No.
Minister and Yes Prime Minister?
No, I have no idea.
तेरा पूरा जिंदगी गया.
Khatam.
But it is a thing that will sell 1 million views ही छोड़ दो, अगर 100,000 views भी आए बहुत ज़्यादा है. These are classics. It's a very cranial kind of humor. And I'm sure this is what sells. So it's fantastic for him because he wants to monetize it, right? I mean, he's not doing this out of any samaj seva or anything like that. He's doing it because paisa aana hai YouTube pe.
You don't think people do political activism because they actually believe in it?
But this isn't political activism, no? This is YouTube.
It's kind of responding to you.
But where's the response?
I'm assuming there's like 22 minutes left on this.
Well, it's already 3 minutes in. Well, 4 minutes in almost. Where's the response so far?
Well, he's building it up.
Sure.
Right.
Okay, let's
yeah.
see.
Yeah.
The factual truth behind these big exposes which are actually just wild conspiracy theories। और ऐसा करना मुझे जरूरी लगा क्योंकि
मिस इन्फॉर्मेशन भी तुम फैलाते जाओ विदाउट एनी ब्लोबैक, वो भी नहीं हो सकता।
तो चलिए शुरू करते हैं ये डिटेल्ड ब्रेकडाउन विद कंस्पिरेसी थ्योरी नंबर 1।
There's a certain fact checker, for example, claims to be neutral. Let me show you this.
Okay, you're talking about Mohammed Zubair.
This is from the book Bharat Jodo Yatra. On page 40 of that book, in Karnataka, senior Congress leader B.K. Hari Prasad, Sasikant Sendil, in brackets former IAS, and Zubair went out of their way to aid us.
Oh, so he's with the Congress.
एक्चुअली एक कांग्रेस कार्यकर्ता है
If you go by just this book, you're a political operative. Then you work for one political party.
इनकी ये 100% फ्रॉड थ्योरी एक्स पे देखने के बाद खुद इस बुक के ऑथर ने इस बचकाने एक्सपोजे का फैक्ट चेक करते हुए बताया कि जिस जुबैर के बारे में बुक में लिखा गया है वो कांग्रेस मेंबर जुबैर हैं, who is not the same person as the fact checker Zubair.
Yeah, what do you have to say to that?
Wait.
Huh.
Okay.
Huh.
Now, here's the thing. He says in the book, now go back to the part of the clip where the book is shown.
The page is shown. Scrub it. Silent पे scrub.
This book.
Silent पे scrub कर ले. Scrub कर ले. हाँ,
there.
Right, yeah.
Stop.
Yeah.
Now, see, in everything, he puts a name of who the person is. In Karnataka, senior Congress leader B.K. Hariprasad. They've always given adjectives, right? Sasikant Senthil, former IAS, and Zubair went out of their way in Andhra Pradesh. K. Raju, in brackets AIAC, in charge for SC/ST, etc. K. Suresh. Everybody is mentioned out there.
Okay.
Zubair is the only person not given a title.
Okay.
Now, when do you use that, first of all, in terms of methodology? When you say Akbar, who am I referring to? Everybody in India knows it's Emperor Akbar. When I say Humayun, it's certainly not my toilet cleaner Humayun. It is assumed it is the Emperor Humayun. You use a term like that without explaining who it is when you're talking about somebody famous enough. Now, to be fair, there is no Muslim naming diversity in this country. Muslim names, one of the problems we have in counterterrorism, for example, is everybody is named Muhammad something or Arshad something and
it's a convergent naming system.
Yeah. So, it becomes impossible. Now, this guy, Pushparaj Dhanraj, if you go to his Twitter profile, this guy claims to be from all kinds of Ivy Leagues. Okay?
The writer of the book.
Pushparaj.
Yeah, this is it. Tell me.
Now, click on his profile.
Yeah.
Now, Aurat Bhaat Jodo Yata, Great Indian Manthan, alumna of Oxford, St. Stephen's and the Doon School.
Okay.
Now, you think he doesn't know how to footnote and how to reference? He just put Zubair there without giving the designation whatever of Manik Raj, assistant to Manik Raj. Kuch to hai na wo Congress party mein.
He's probably a party worker. Kya explanation hai? Show me the... No. Go to the video. Yeah. Is pe kya hai? Publicity in a book, but why take away credit from INC Zubair aid to so and so. So he's probably a minor person.
Now he's claiming that this is the aid. Now, number one, to tune likha kyun nahi tha? I mean, you're very clearly detailing. So this guy knows how to put designation in this and that. But Zubair pe tune kyun choda? You should have put aid to BK Hariprasad or whatever. Generally, it is assumed that when people say Hitler or people say Akbar, there are many Hitlers throughout history. There are many Akbars throughout history. If I go out into a Muslim mohalla here and say Akbar, 100 Akbars will come out. Either that or he got into Doon, St. Stephen's and Union of Oxford through means other than merit. If he is right and this is this guy, then this guy doesn't know how to write a book. Or
what if he's baiting?
Could choose ke. It could also be baiting.
Yeah, he might have baited.
Fair.
Yeah.
Third possibility. Okay. Number one. Number two, this guy, first of all, why did it become such a hot button issue that Zubair had offered help to the Congress? Because Zubair in his tweet after counting himself said, "Dear INC and Rahul Gandhi ji, if we have supported you throughout this, now we demand this. He also admits it. Okay?
What is the crime?
There's no crime in it.
Yeah, like
it's
supporting
just that
a political party.
No. He openly admits it also.
Right.
Now, so this guy has clearly gotten into soup over this. He's been asked to do it. Now, this is like going and saying, Vijay Mallya ji, aapne paise chori kiya? Nahi, maine chori nahi kiya. Headlines. Fake news was spread that Vijay Mallya conned people of money. Vijay Mallya denies it, therefore it is wrong. Interested party. He's been caught with his pants down.
But
so how is it a
why
denial?
would he put a name that he's not okay? So now that this news is popping up, he's trying to defend. Why would he put the name in the first place then? Agar usko utna hi defend karna pad raha hai baad mein, why would he self-write a name that he has to defend later?
Why would he?
Yeah.
But he probably never realized.
He probably means this guy, not not Mohammed Zubair.
But then he would have, you saw, see, there is a fundamental methodological flaw in the text.
Sure, and that might be an
Which-
error. Like,
It
why are we
could be.
attributing it to malice and specifically going in that direction?
It's either malice or he's an incompetent book writer.
But yeah, okay, first of all, I don't understand if Zubair is pro-Congress, why is that a hot deal? You are pro-BJP and that's not a hot deal.
Nothing.
Right?
So why are they denying it? Why is it so
Important to deny it.
Why is it so important to deny it? Yeah, if Zubair is part of you, it's not an accusation.
I mean,
But why are you so upset? Are you ashamed to be seen with Zubair?
is your theory you've jumped on a
But-
landmine? Huh.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I still don't understand why are they so upset that Zubair supports them.
What is the big deal?
I don't know.
What is your theory?
You tell me.
I have no idea.
Probably because internally he's also seen as a liability and a jihadi.
Damn.
Right.
So they will take his support but not
But
show
here's the
allegiance.
thing, when he was in jail, Rahul Gandhi openly tweeted in his support, no? Now, there are these other clips I've sent you. Put them up. I want
Wait,
you
you
to
guys
see
are
this.
prepared for this?
Oh, yeah.
Why are
we
you
prepared for
baiting me
this.
into this, bro? मेरे को लगा हम सिर्फ ये वीडियो देखने वाले हैं.
नहीं,
Show me.
पहले वो सुप्रिया वाला फोटो दिखाओ. Now, you zoom in on what is on this thing. This is Supriya Sreenate
हाँ.
going off to Manipur on the East-West Bharat Jodo Yatra. I don't
Okay.
know. I think it was called Bharat Jodo Nyaya Yatra.
Huh.
See the Sham Sharma show in both the things?
Whoa.
Ah. So this was when they were taking that joke of a flight. Okay.
Huh.
The next day, literally the next day, Zubair then tweets this out. Put out the second photo. That is me, you can see. This is where I said Brahmin bastards or something.
Huh.
And he's like, if this was said by someone else, IT cell would have rushed to file FIRs at multiple blah, 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 blah. This is the clip from the Sham Sharma show. Now, the thing is, the URL for this and the URL that we figured out she was holding are the exact same thing.
So you're saying there's an internal distribution of that URL?
Clearly, because when she has okayed it, it has gone to him for him to tweet.
But isn't this system also true for the other side? Like, there is an operational...
Of course, I'm sure it is.
Well, you know it is.
I'm
But there's
sure it is.
There's a systematic way in which tweets go out.
I'm sure it is, but it's just that nobody's ever approached me because they know I'm f***ing temperamental. And if they
You're a
approach
wild
me
card.
too,
You're a wild card. Like,
I'm a wild card.
Yeah, like there's no saying what you will say. Yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
right? Which I get into a lot of shit also for it. but
Right.
Anyway, now when there is clear demonstrable evidence, put up the third one now.
Oh, you're going deep, huh?
Sir, eggs part of midday meal in government school sharing an old video.
From 21.
Will do, chief. This is the Home Minister of Karnataka.
Priyank Kharge? Huh.
ठीक है? And then, of course, there's a famous thing of Zubair receiving some award from Stalin
Huh.
for repeating government denials. Now, one of the things IFC and the International Fact Checkers thing is fairly clear. It's not crystal clear in there, this thing, that denial does not equal a fact check. And this was the reason 2 years running, Alt News's fact check status was withheld by IFCN, and then Pratik Sinha said, oh, we're not joining it anymore. He made a virtue out of necessity because they were not getting past. Imagine, even the IFCN run by Pointer Institute is so left-wing. In spite of that, they weren't even willing to pass these guys. So they, for 2-3 years, they had to go around claiming they were signatories to the IFCN. They weren't even IFCN certified after that.
So what you're basically saying is that if you deny, it's not necessarily fact-checking by the IFC standards.
Correct.
And because alt news is in the business of
So
denying...
this is what I'm saying. If I say Prakhar made an inappropriate pass at me before, by the way, guys, before we came on, this fellow's a closet homosexual. He tried to grope
There
me.
is no closet. I'm outside.
Yeah.
But I don't enjoy him.
He tried to grope me. Rubbish. You said, I get...
I was groping him because I missed the feel of tomatoes in my hands.
That's it.
But it was more like potatoes, so it didn't work.
But anyway,
This humor you enjoy. I
आलू-
like that.
आलू वैसे टमाटर से ज्यादा बड़े होते हैं रामी. तो
तेरे बहुत बड़े हैं मेरे भाई. क्या है मैं? हेलो बेटा.
So,
Anyway, हाँ.
इसमें क्या होता है कि you can't now say that now this has to be proved through CCTV camera or something. You are an interested party. You've been put on a spot. Obviously, you're going to deny it. ठीक है? It's like, why do we even have a trial then? If the accused says no, I didn't do it, उसको छोड़ दो. वो क्या कहाँ से fact check हुआ?
हाँ, तो at that point there is no.
So understand, this whole thing shows you how little all these fuckers understand about fact checking, how little the being human understands about a riposte. And when you leave so much of a signature trail where Supriya is dumb enough to be flashing papers around like that, which then is used, the exact same clip is then used by Zubair the next day. Really? And you're trying to tell me that this Pushparaj Dhanraj,
Desh Pandey,
जो भी है यार, is so meticulous about everybody else's designation except one Zubair. When he knows, I've been being in Oxford and Doon and St. Stephen's.
what I'm understanding from the sound of it, from what you're making it sound like, because I haven't heard from Vinamr on all of these issues, it does look like you've ended up on a landmine.
Where, Tamil Nadu police, it's amazing, they respond to anything. How is it Tamil Nadu police suddenly starts responding to Zubair and provides him with information to disprove theories which are basically official denials? He doesn't even understand 101 of fact checking. When you have this clearly, sequential pattern, it's partially visible, but when you look at the URL of this thing and you run the clearing, I'm sorry because I sent it to you on WhatsApp, the
image is right,
reduced. We used sharpening to ye karo file. The URLs match that thing. Now, problem here is when you clearly have a sequence of events and and Rahul Gandhi's tweet saying this and Zubair's tweet after the 2024 general election saying we supported you, we expect this. Why is it so this thing for you? इसमें क्या हुआ है कि you think it is so embarrassing for you? As in, are you ashamed to be associated with a jihadi? You should be. I mean, the bugger has led to 12 beheading deaths, 12 deaths in this country, including one that was live streamed on WhatsApp of a guy's throat being cut. But she's very familiar with him. She's actually friends with a jihadi.
But you see, for a political amateur who will observe the landscape from a distance, first of all, like, I'm an idiot. I only speak to very few, like, मेरे यहाँ घर पे बात होती है politics को लेके. I'm not as well informed, right? It would not surprise me if Zubair and Congress were together.
So that is what I don't
It's
understand.
normal.
Why is that such an issue?
Because
So, this is the same like with News Laundry, for example. One of their main faces is actually married to a Congressee. Right? But never any disclosure about it. ये लोग media ethics सिखाएंगे दूसरे लोगों को. There should be a constant thing saying this person is married to a Congressee. Right. There has to be that caveat there.
Because then you at least know there's conflict of interest to that extent.
But remember, they hide it. They don't even want you to know it.
यार मतलब पता है अगर एक बुक में कल को आता है ना that Abhijit helped और वो it's a BJP book and it says Abhijit helped or like Iyer-Mitra helped.
Yeah, see, the problem is I've given so much galis to Modi and the BJP
that they won't put your name there even if it rightfully deserves to be there.
Even if, but at any rate, they have not. I work with government. I don't work with the BJP.
Right.
And there's a reason the BJP doesn't take my help because they consider me too cantankerous and...
I do too, for the official record.
You.
Bro, but like imagine being Sham sitting in wherever the hell middle America, he's in Midwest, keh raha, bhai, Supriya Srinath is holding my name in his hand. Like what? Sham's life is like, bro, what the hell? What the hell? Do we have this level of responses to the other things that he's mentioned as well?
I don't know.
No, matlab, you guys came prepared. Aur bhi hai kuch
Boss, I couldn't watch that. I told you I couldn't watch that video behind a minute. So I asked our man here कि क्या हुआ है करके, and he's like, sir, उसने ये बोला है. I'm like, अच्छा ये तो because this
is handleable.
The only reason I have this is because this became big on Twitter.
Right.
तो ये आया है.
हाँ, right.
बाकी का I can't. Boss, I told you ना, I can't sit for 30 seconds in a Carrie Minati video or more than about.
Can you respond to being human? Looking at the camera, can you tell him what you actually think about him?
जो बोलना है सो बोल दिया है.
बाकी बातें मैं बाद में करूंगा.
इसको 1 महीना लगा रेस्पॉन्स में क्योंकि सुप्रिया श्रीनेट का पेमेंट अभी तेरे पास आया है ना.
But like ऐसे ही चलता है सब, मतलब पेमेंट तो चलती हैं, you know this.
Of course चलता है बॉस. So this is why I never want to start my own YouTube channel.
Because मैं पैसे नहीं ले पाऊंगा. हाँ?
नहीं,
फिर मैं ले लूंगा
पैसे तो मैं बहुत ले लूंगा
पर मैं काम नहीं करूंगा फिर
पर काम नहीं करूंगा.
फिर मैं बोलूंगा वो जो मेरे को बोलना है. हाँ.
And so, this is the thing. This is why I refuse to accept anything. Like, some companies reached out for whatever. I'm like, boss, listen, it's better for you. I am advising you. Don't put it, because some of the opinions I have will cause you embarrassment later.
I think what you should do is on all your kurtas, it should say Ola EV, and then you should appear on all shows doing that.
Oh shit, yeah.
And then you should say, I didn't take any money from no one.
Actually, that's a very good idea.
I'm a branding expert.
But yaar, see that. Okay, so I have a. See, I lead a very, very comfortable life with the money I earn.
Yeah.
Okay, and no amount of cancellation can ever touch my employment.
Right.
Okay,
Which is a very good place to be in for your
which
sanity.
is a very good place to be.
Yeah.
So the problem is, they can keep trolling IPCS, ORF, whatever. They don't give a flying for your opinions, because clearly what I bring is of greater value than whatever cancellation you can do. Okay. And this isn't my thing. What I really want to do is start a YouTube cooking channel. But
Damn.
it's for my love of cooking. You understand?
Right.
It's not for the monetization or any shit like that.
Right.
Because I have what I want. I'm very content. Sure, would I like to be like Neeta Bhabhi and have massive bloody diamonds the size of most people's wrists?
Testicles. Sorry, wrist.
Sure. Do I want to have a bloody Gulfstream private jet? Sure. But I'm never going to begrudge them that for the hard work they do. And I'm very happy flying my business class on any flights over 3 hours.
Right.
Because if anybody gets me for a speaking engagement, my contract includes that. Ki anything over 3 hours, Mr. Abhijit Iyer-Mitra only flies business class.
We should include this in our contract.
Yes.
Actually, there's one more clip.
तेरे
Because,
को कौन speak करने को बुलाएगा बे?
bro, my calendar's booked.
तू ये करता है, तू बात कहाँ करता है, तू प्रश्न पूछता है.
इससे पहले मैं बात करता था ना, फिर मेरे को लोगों ने बोला अभिजीत अय्यर-मित्रा को बुलाओ और उसको बोलने दो, और मैंने बोला अब मैं करियर डिसाइड कर रहा हूँ.
अच्छा
तो फिर तब से हम
ये मैं तेरे पॉडकास्ट में कितनी बार आ चुका हूँ बे?
भाई मेरे को तो पता है कई बार क्या लगता है, you've groomed me into podcasting. Is that true? Do you think that?
Grooming has its own connotations
And
these
we've
days,
already
but-
admitted to that. Okay. I know you have to run and we've been at it for a while.
I can go on.
Yeah, you don't have to rush now. It's 4 o'clock.
No, 2 of my meetings have cancelled, so it's fine.
Oh, lucky. Is there a question you have for me? And not about Mexico, because I'm not willing to discuss this in public.
What's your favorite kind of human sacrifice?
What's my favorite kind of human sacrifice? Damn, bro, this question's going to get me in trouble. I definitely find this... Acha, I had no idea, first of all, until I visited this time, that there was active human sacrifice in Aztecs and such.
So, they're very ashamed about it. They keep trying to talk it down or pretending it never happened. It was a Stone Age society. It obviously happened. We tend to forget. In the gunpowder age, we discovered a Stone Age civilization, or the entire set of civilizations was they hadn't even entered the Bronze Age.
So, basically what you're telling is that Aztecs were actually very ancient people living in very modern times.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I also feel, bro, with Mexico specifically, you see the gentry, the color darkens and the facial features really become more native as you go poorer.
Yes.
The poor and the rich look very different in Mexico.
Very different. And the more south you go, so if you go to Chiapas and things like that, when you go from the Aztec areas to the Maya areas,
Right.
That's when you see the real color shift happening.
It's very strange.
That said, we also need to remember that the upper gentry do have a bit of Mestiz blood. Because ever since Emperor Maximilian proclaimed that every Mexican will take a native wife, they're not too happy about it, but they do. And there are a lot of totally white-looking people who will claim, like, Pocahontas in America. Elizabeth Warren.
Elizabeth Warren. Yeah.
Like Pocahontas, but they're actually real... what was the woman who helped Hernan Cortes called? La Malinke. La Malena.
Achha, I have no idea.
Hernan
Cortes is also a major
the
Mexican
conquistador, the
right.
asshole who destroyed the...
Who came in the Spanish troops, right?
Yeah. so they'll all claim a certain level of native ancestry. Some of them like to hide it because it's not really the done thing kind of thing, you know. But they all accepted Emperor Maximilian's orders, by the way. Huh?
There is a running joke about being Mexican and Whitexicans, and Whitexicans are effectively European Mexicans pretending to be American.
But you know, there's a new trend of giving your children Aztec names.
And you've suggested me names that's not going to happen.
Why not?
Bro, why am I discussing this stuff on camera? That can't happen. We are not talking about
See,
this.
you're a racist if you don't give your kids Aztec names.
Off the record, I'm fine with racism. Off the record. Just because I said off the record, it's fine. I'm okay with it. Like, bro, how are we pretending in the modern world that people are not racist? People are racist. It's the normal. I think it's nobler to not be racist. I think it's better, generally speaking, but I'm okay with it. If people are racist, they're racist, you know? People are racist towards me, I'm racist towards them. It's a fine exchange. We now verbally war. Like you will do in Jaipur dialogues.
But see, you are rejecting a part of your soon-to-be heritage. Why would you do that?
Because the part of heritage I bring to the table is more dominant and supersedes.
That doesn't matter. So you see, one of your kids has to be named Zompantli, which was a skull rack. You know, Zompantli is
It's a skull rack. Listen to this, a skull rack.
It's the skull rack, right? And what used to happen was after the victims had been sacrificed, they were decapitated, 2 holes would be bored and, you know, bamboos would be put and the skulls would be displayed on the skull rack. Think of it, it's a powerful name for
skulls are
kid.
a very deep, there's a lot of skulls
Huge
in Mexico.
symbolism in Mexico.
What is really so many skulls. You
Yes.
can buy full-size skulls that are decorated. They're not real skulls, but like skulls.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's strange.
So it's very important in all Mesoamerican cultures. Except maybe the Incas, possibly, yeah. Maybe even the Chimu, but anyway. So it's, I think Zompantli is a lovely name for your kid to have. For your male kid.
Zompantli, Zompantli. Maharashtra.
And I think, you know, your daughter's name should also be something equivalent.
Damn. You know what Klaus said? Klaus said, I'm going to name if it's a boy, I'm going to name him Prakhar. And I said, you cannot do that.
Prakhar Gupta II.
Right? I was like, you cannot do this because ऐसे ही मेरे को लोग narcissist कहते हैं. फिर तो बोलेंगे पक्का narcissist है. बच्चे का नाम भी प्रखर रख दिया.
No, I insist. Even if not, उसका हिंदुस्तान में जब आएगा, उसका नाम मैं रखूंगा. I will call him Zompantli.
हाँ, Zompantli, bro. Zompantli, बेचारा बच्चा ट्रॉमेटाइज हो रहा है. अभिजीत ताऊ जी मेरे को क्या कह रहे हैं?
So, I've decided what your kids' pet names are going to be. Zompantli, Huitzilopochtli, and Tlaloc.
थूक रहे नाम नहीं ले रहे. इधर आ थूकू तेरे मुंह पे.
And you know, the Tlaloc sacrifice was the most fun. So, you know, Tlaloc was the god of rain. Rain and rejuvenation.
Oh,
and
that's right.
So what used to happen was, because they used to practice slash and burn.
Right.
So what they do is, the sacrificial human would be taken and they would first be thrown into this fire.
Right.
Before they died, they'd be taken out. And at this point, like Bengan ka bharta, the outside is charred, but they're not dead. And then like Bengan ka bharta, the charred skin would be removed and then it'd be thrown back in. So it symbolizes...
Why do you know this? What is the reason for a man to know this?
Because I actually worked on an archaeological dig in Peru.
But that doesn't answer the question. Why do you know this? Like, what constitutes the curiosity of a man that leads him to understand torture tactics of Mesoamerican?
It isn't torture
14th
tactics.
century?
It isn't torture. I'll tell you why I got into all of this. First, I was very deeply into Mesoamerican archaeology. And we need to remember historians and archaeologists are very different.
Historians are narrativistic, archaeologists are digging.
Fact and digging.
Right.
And most historians don't even know how to read an archaeological site report.
I've heard that.
Okay. And I learnt that. Now, I learnt during the dig that I wasn't really too much into this digging data thing, but I did learn how to read a lot of site reports and things like that, right? So that was interesting. I found it important, but I realized my real interest was in examining the narratives around it, right? And then I realized there was this chronic inferiority complex that any sign of human sacrifice and this was a Moche site I was in. Now, this is in Peru. Now, the Moche were prolific human sacrificialists. The Inca, which come much later, the Moche are BC, the Inca are 1500s, were not. In fact, possibly the least amount of human sacrifices and the least gruesome were by the Inca. They were possibly mentally modernizing in that sense and coming out of it. I realized that there was so much denial of it and trying to hide it.
Yeah.
Even amongst archaeologists, you look at something which is very clearly a sign of sacrifice.
Right.
And they're trying to find every explanation under the sun except that it is human sacrifice.
Right.
You understand? So I was like,
There is a shame
why are they
associated.
trying to hide? So this comes back to our discussion with Supriya and Zubair.
Right.
And so my interest is piqued. And why does being human get paid to disprove something that he's not, that doesn't involve him, that's between Supriya and Zubair?
Damn, so you think he's getting paid to actually
I know
come
he's
and-
getting paid, yaar. He's
You know
almost
how
100
much?
certain. Who knows?
Acha. You think significant sum? Or is it like...
5 कौड़ी के लिए नाचता होगा और क्या?
Bro, being human, मैं permission दे रहा हूँ. कम एक और वीडियो बनाओ भाई.
एक और वीडियो बना भाई
एक
तू.
और expose करो भाई. But bro, thank you so much. This has been absolutely a blast. I have enjoyed this. I actually will put something right after this where I'm going to talking to the camera. Thank you. You should come here every month. And we should have jokes done here every month. Right?
Let's do human sacrifice-based
Bro,
podcast.
what is this? Oh, just like exploring the idea. Not
Yeah.
actually... हाँ, ठीक है. I was like, why are we discussing human sacrifice again? हाँ, ठीक है.
Because this is all... I'm blaming you for this.
Why?
Who the hell asked you to bring Mexico into the conversation?
You got Benito Juarez in the conversation.
Who told you to ask me a question that made me bring in Mexico into the
We were
conversation?
talking about neighbors.
I
and
started talking
ending the
about
Middle
Benito
East.
Juarez and you started talking about small countries.
What kind of responsibility and accountability do you take in your general life? What are you willing to admit is actually your fault?
Everything, really.
Thank you so much, guys. Bro, thank you so much. This was so much fun. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome. I have been thinking about it for a second. And now I've decided I'm going to do it. I'm going to do a segment after every podcast where I sit down with you and talk about what I've learned in this podcast. And maybe it's just not what I've learned in this podcast, but what I've been thinking about, right? I became a influencer, if I may. I became an influencer doing pravachan, and it's sort of the return of the pravachan. In a weird way, we are bringing the pravachan back, right? And why I'm doing this, apart from all the jokes, is because I think एक conversation के बाद, एक podcast के बाद, there's so much that we learn. So much about podcasting, or so much of the good side about podcasting is about information density, perspective density. कि 5 मिनट की conversation में इतना कुछ सीखने को मिल जाता है कि ऐसे आदमी से जो अपना दिल खोल के तुम्हारे सामने बैठा है. Right? Or sometimes with guys like Abhijit particularly, दिल से ज़्यादा अपना दिमाग लेके तुम्हारे साथ बैठे हैं. And since we are the medium, since we are the route through which all of this gets to you, I want to add one more thing to this route. If podcasting is about learning, then I'm going to sit down with you, break the fourth wall. Maybe we call it that. है ना अच्छा title है ना segment का. Maybe we call it breaking the fourth wall. And talk to you about what I've learned and what I thought was interesting, what I think is noteworthy and what I think you could take home and think about. For instance, one of the things I did in this podcast, and it's a smaller, minor thing. What I did in this podcast is मैंने ना इस podcast की language बहुत undiluted रखी. मैंने कभी भी अभिजीत को नहीं बोला अभिजीत इसको explain करना, इसको simplify करना, इसको dumb down करना. And part of the reason why I did that is because I think podcasting as a media is done with level 1 podcasting. I think वो जो बिल्कुल मासी हम बिल्कुल ही लोगों को सुपर सिंपल लेवल पे समझाना चाहते हैं. अरे तुम इजराइल ईरान की बात कर रहे हो यार. You're talking about one of the deepest geopolitical conflicts of the modern times. You're talking about Trump, talking about Modi, right? These are not simple matters, and I think you can get much deeper and much farther if you do not hold back and try and simplify everything down for the lowest common denominator. It's like in classrooms, one of the complaints about modern education systems is कि because we move as fast as the slowest student in the class, the fastest student loses out. And so on some level with this conversation, I thought, and you tell me how you think, because I personally enjoyed this much, much more. But, we'll consider feedback. I think with podcasting, I'm okay letting the conversation happen and not necessarily dumbing it down or simplifying it at every juncture, right? The second thing, and this is again a meta point about the conversation itself, we'll get into the conversation in just a second, is, bro, I'm fascinated by Abhijit's character. Abhijit is probably the most entertaining political / geopolitical commentator in our times, in this particular teapot of YouTube, this particular side of YouTube. It's so interesting because he's so vicious. जहर उगलता है, जहर जब वो चाहता है, उसको भी पता है, तुम्हें भी पता है, you as listeners or haters of him know, जहर उगलता है, और मेरे को भी पता है. I know that too. I'm in on it, right? But on one side there is that viciousness, but on the other side there is this apparent educatedness, this very information-rich quality about him. And it makes for such a interesting, watchable, entertaining combination. And I mean, props to him for being this person, because on a RAF or in parties or in front of a microphone, he's the same guy, right? Props to him for that. But it's a very interesting lesson in media. It's a very interesting lesson in personality development as well, because you see, polarization makes for very interesting personality. There's something I've learned more recently, or I've at least verbalized more recently. I found a way to express it in my head. मेरे को पता था somewhat that this is true, but I've been able to verbalize it. When you polarize, it makes you capture attention. Let's put it like that. But when you add a paradox to that polarization, when you're Andrew Tate and talk some degree of very offensive stuff, but you're also super articulate, that paradox amplifies the watchability. With Abhijit, he can be very vicious. He can kneecap your ego pretty literally. तुम्हारी टांग तोड़ सकता है, लेकिन तुम्हारे मन की टांग, कि तुम्हारा मन ही आगे ना चल पाए, तुम फंस जाओ वहां पे, right? But then he's so information rich, so educated. It's a brilliant combination, at least in the sense of media, at least in the sense of watchability. And trust me, एक global media space में morality is a very, sorry तूने ये बोल कैसे दिया, but in private settings, you know what I'm talking about, when you're with your friends, when you're out meeting people, etc. Some flavor is very interesting in people. It's not like, everything is off the table. You have to be politically correct when you're in private quarters. So all I'm saying is, don't become Abhijit, but you can learn something from Abhijit. As far as the conversation is concerned, there's some very interesting points about politics, geopolitics that I wanted to bring up. The first one is what came up around when we were talking about France and France's involvement in the Israel-Iran or Israel and the rest of the Middle East conflict. And I said this, I articulated it like this to myself a long time ago. I said, politics is about strategy, but it's packaged as morality. And the packaging is done by guys like myself, media people. What we do is, see, जो आदमी टॉप पे बैठा है ना, जिसको देश संभालना है, जिसको फैमिली संभालनी है, जिसको घर संभालना है, वो आदमी दिल से डिसीजन नहीं लेता. एटलीस्ट मटीरियल डिसीजंस, इंपॉर्टेंट डिसीजन दिल से नहीं लेता, वो स्ट्रैटेजी से लिए जाते हैं. पर उसको बाद में जो नैरेटिव बनाया जाता है ना उसके अराउंड, वो होता है वैल्यूज का नैरेटिव, वो होता है सही गलत का नैरेटिव. और तुम और मैं और हम बनते हैं प्यादे इस नैरेटिव्स के गेम में, इस PR के गेम में. And you see this massively in America right now. If any of you are in America or Canada, you see how people are protesting for Israel and Palestine. America is constantly imbued in a PR battle that has been created by the media when things that move America are strategic. But or examples, and I mentioned this, there is this example that Abhijit talks about Modi forgetting the past when it comes to America, rejecting him, America denying him a visa, the Western world rejecting him, and Modi said, I'll move on. That is the narrative that gets created. But strategically speaking, a head of state for India, a prime minister for India, is not going to hold on to personal grudges as against the interest of the country. This is what I mean. जो decision Modi ji ने लिया कि boss, I'm going to be friends with America, even though they did to me what they did back in the early 2000s, is a strategic decision. But जब उसकी कहानी बनेगी ना, it will be a moral story. Look how great and lofty he is. This is generally how it works. इसमें कोई वैल्यू जजमेंट नहीं, मैं सही गलत की बात नहीं कर रहा, मैं तुम्हें बता रहा हूँ दुनिया चलती कैसे है, especially politics की. But similarly, you see the Muslim Brotherhood or the Muslim nations' relationship with Israel and Palestine we discussed, and Abhijit makes the point that it's much more detailed than just thinking कि Muslims will come together and help Palestinian Muslims. right? The Gulf, it aligns itself with Israel in a weird way, right? People want the downfall of Iran. The other Muslim nations might want the downfall of Iran and so on. And we might expect sentimentally, morally, for a analyst, we might think कि भाई देखो ऐसा है, अगर पैलेस्टाइन में मुस्लिम्स मर रहे हैं तो बाकी मुस्लिम ब्रदरहुड उनके साथ आएगा. But the Muslim nations are going to act out in their strategic best interest. And then they will package it very well in a moral media narrative. You see this as an overt example, according to Abhijit. I can't commit to any of Abhijit's position. I can learn from them, but I can't commit to it. About France. He talks about how France is in the real ticker. The real reason why France moves is weapon trade. But it packages itself as if, bro, we are very sentimental about Lebanon. We have associations historically with Lebanon and so on and so forth. ये एक कांस्टेंट थीम है और ये जान के रखना, क्योंकि जब भी तुम्हें कोई पॉलिटिकल नैरेटिव आए, देखना उसके पीछे स्ट्रेटेजिक इंटरेस्ट क्या है, क्योंकि रियल मुद्दा वो है. ऊपर गिफ्ट रैपिंग मॉरल है, और गिफ्ट रैपिंग मॉरल उनसे क्या होता है, तुम्हारे इमोशंस मूव होते हैं, और तुम्हारे इमोशंस मूव होते हैं तो क्या होता है, तुम मूव होते हो, और तुम मूव होते हो तो क्या होता है पता है, नो ऑर्डर एग्जिस्ट्स विदाउट अप्रूवल in democracy. Mass approval is very important. When people change their moods, industries fall and governments fall. And so your consent is very important. And you must be careful where your consent goes when you're not looking. Chalo. Number 2. I think it was very interesting when Abhijit spoke about the nuance around terrorism, war crime and collateral. I mean, again, I can't commit to Abhijit's definition. I always feel like with politics and geopolitics, there are more facts and information that you could get. People in the comment section will be already busy typing those out. But it's a very beautiful example of how language and nuance shapes perception. कि अगर आपको ना पता हो ना कि टेररिज्म में और collateral damage में फर्क क्या है अभिजीत के अकॉर्डिंग, in Abhijit's factual universe, but in the definitions of the United Nations and so on, right? If you don't know the difference, you can confuse collateral damage for terrorism and terrorism for resistance very quickly. And I'm not saying, again, I'm not getting into the factual accuracy of what he said. I cannot confirm it myself. I can get it out of him. I can get out information that he knows, but मैं खुद से confirm नहीं कर सकता. But from a personal standpoint, for listeners, for me, for you, I think a great lesson there is learn how to wield language. It's a brutal world out there. And the further you grow up and the closer you come to the death of your father, the closer you come to your country or your society or your civilization going into turmoil, the closer you come to the world getting at each other's throat. The closer you get to these things, language will go from just a happy medium in which Prakhar and Rohit talk or Prakhar and Ansh talk to becoming a weapon. And in all personal endeavors, अगर तुम business कर रहे हो, वैसे भी बहुत oppressive forces हैं बेटा, तुम्हें सब रोकना चाहते हैं दुनिया में. Everybody wants to stop you. If you're trying to build something of your own. If you're trying to fight for what you think is right, everyone's going to come and try and stop you. The world doesn't change very simply. And one of the fastest ways to make the world change is the use of language. Learn how to use language well. If you do not do that, you cannot blame the world later for not giving you what you think you deserve. It's one of the fundamental technologies. It's one of those archaic, short ways of getting successful and secure in life. And not just for yourself, but the people around you. If you refuse to follow, then that's on you. समझे? ठीक है. Okay. Number 3 is very interesting. Might offend a few people, but it has to be said, right? Abhijit talked about how Israel invested in human capital, and I think a little bit of that is possible because Israel has a smaller area and a smaller population to manage. But you see the difference it causes in, if you've ever been to Tel Aviv, or for that matter, any of the other major cities of Israel. The life, given how pressured life in Israel is with all these foreign actors around you who are trying to get to you, the life is still phenomenally good. The quality of life, the standard of human intelligence, phenomenally good. And I think this is, iska symptom आप by the way देख सकते हो इंडिया में. The lack of investment in human capital you can see in things like primary education, secondary education, schools. हमारे यहाँ के स्कूल क्या होते हैं bro? Be realistic. Maybe top 1% schools. your IB schools, your DPSs and that kind of stuff is okay. But largely, look at it. The public infrastructure is failing. And then otherwise infrastructure देखो, तुम सड़कें देखो, बिजली देखो. 2025 हो गया, बिजली नहीं आती. लाइट जाती है अभी भी. क्या होता है उससे? प्रोडक्टिविटी लूज होती है यार. ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट के प्रोग्रेशन पे फुल स्टॉप, कॉमा, एक्सक्लेमेशन मार्क लगते हैं ब्रो. I am all for patriotism. I'm all for the fact that India is in the best shape it's ever been. And it's a formidable force in the world. I'm all for it. But you have to find a way to safely and productively criticize what is up and what is not. Otherwise, you don't move forward. And this is one of the most constructive criticisms. We are a very high intelligence society, but we are malnourished. So even if we have that genetic resource कि हम intelligent हो सकते हैं, अगर खाना नहीं जाएगा, दिमाग grow नहीं करेगा बॉस. उसको वो education की fertility नहीं मिलेगी, दिमाग grow नहीं करेगा. And it will hold us back. This population size of 1.5 billion makes for great market, but doesn't make for competitive production. हम producers में इतने आगे नहीं जितने consumer में है. Consumer में आगे तो दुनिया ध्यान देती है, पर जब तक producer में आगे नहीं जाएंगे ना, तो दुनिया डरेगी नहीं बॉस. चाइना के पास क्या है? यही तो है, मैन्युफैक्चरिंग हमसे बेटर है. पूरी दुनिया की मार्केट चाइना पे डिपेंडेंट है. लड़ नहीं सकते उनसे, मुंह पे उल्टा नहीं बोल सकते उन्हें कोई. हम सिर्फ कंज्यूमर हैं, और वो भी लो इनकम कंज्यूमर हैं. एंट्री हो गई है बिग लीग्स में, बट आई थिंक दिस इज गोइंग टू बिकम अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट पार्ट ऑफ फर्दरिंग द इंडियन कॉज. इज वी हैव टू गेट वेरी सीरियस एंड वेरी प्रिसाइज अबाउट द फैक्ट कि हमारा ह्यूमन कैपिटल लो है. The human capital index is probably not as good, and part of the symptoms of it is infrastructure and education and healthcare to some extent, even though we do very well on that. But these are the big issues. But जब elections की बात आती है, जब politics की बात आती है ना, कोई भी इस मुद्दे पे politics नहीं कर सकता, क्योंकि ये interesting नहीं है, ये emotional मुद्दा नहीं है, इससे आपके दिल को नहीं हिलाया जा सकता, इसके अराउंड morality नहीं बनाई जा सकती. ये सीधा सच, boring, unsalted truth है. तो ये आपको शायद हो सकता है, अगर आप अभी तक वीडियो देख रहे हो, तो हम आपको डिलीवर करना चाहेंगे ताकि आप भी इस बारे में सोचो और हम भी सोचें, और हो सकता है हम कुछ आई डोंट नो थिंग्स चेंज. एनीवे, द फोर्थ एंड probably the last point I have is, and this is something that came up around when we were discussing Trump talking about Modi, right? This inferiority complex that the Indian had felt, I still think to some extent does feel, it still remains. I see it when I go abroad and travel. But it is undeniably lesser than what it used to be. And I legitimately think the success of this BJP government that has lasted now NDA, but this BJP force, Modi ji, the reason why this era of Hindutva exists, I think one of these analytical, without value judgments, I'm not saying it's good or bad, I'm not committing to a political position, but you have to see what the real change has been and how that's led to their popularity. Is that the average Indian person is no longer as inferiority driven. They do not feel inferior at the same level that they did before. The post-colonial trauma is not as obvious now. You can see this symptomatically in the fact कि भाई हमारी foreign policy has changed. You can, or at least has become louder. You can see how we are much more willing to go back into our roots and come up with answers, sometimes to a fault. Sometimes वो WhatsApp वाले forwards go a little, सब कुछ ही हमने solve कर लिया था. काफ़ी कुछ करा होगा, हो सकता है बहुत interesting चीज़ें solve करी, सब कुछ is a little bit of a stretch. And it's also a natural response to inferiority. वो inferiority की injury is often met with a superiority का bandage. And then it becomes realistic. But you can see that shift. And that shift has been possible with the media communication of this government, this 15-year-long government, अभी 11वें साल में हम. इस era में ना, इंडियन आदमी शर्म नहीं खाता. एक सेंस ऑफ प्राइड के साथ काम करता है. और ये बड़ा ज़रूरी हो जाता है, क्योंकि जब वोटिंग का टाइम आता है, although India is a very detailed and there's many pixels to India's demographic, right? But to people like myself, and I think I represent in a country of what, 150 crores, few crores, right? Like you look like, in some way, shape or form, you always look like a few crore people in India. I think it's a very important issue when it comes to voting. I think it really changes sentimentally how people feel about themselves, and therefore it translates into voting. And so credit where credit is due, I'm very happy for this. We'll talk about more of this at some point. Anyway. The last and the final point is that I think the next episode we do is going to be a solo podcast, long form. We'll talk for a long while. I don't know how long this has been, but I think I talk and you like, so you'll stay here. And I'm going to talk about my recent trip to America. And there's a lot of data points I want to cover there because this was by far the best experience, the best 1 month I've spent in my life. Anywhere. Vacation, non-vacation. Achievement, non-achievement. Pleasure, non-pleasure. Like, not just in terms of what I learned. मैं कल अपने दोस्त के साथ बैठा था and we were talking about my trip. And I just could not stop saying, and one more thing I realized about myself and one more thing I realized about myself. And a lot of these things I realize you'd like to realize about yourself. मेरा एक default mechanism है दिमाग में. And if somebody's followed my content before podcasting, you'd know I'm pulling out lessons from things all the time. I did that with movies at a certain point. I did that with pravachans. We used to run a series back in 2022 for I watch a movie and I'm like, wow, how does this change the way I think? What is really happening on my mind? And so for me, this trip, because it was so dense in terms of experience, there's a lot of changes that have happened. Very challenging, this experience. Like I was constantly pushed to realize my insufficiencies in a certain way. And so I want to talk about the lessons I learned and talk about the experiences I've had because it's very interesting. I think India is at a point where the Indian mind is not just curious, but also resourced, also financed enough to go abroad. Go to places it's never been and explore. And you can see this exodus of the Indian curiosity at the Baku airport in Azerbaijan, at the Hanoi airport in Vietnam, right? Like just हर चौथा आदमी मेरे Instagram पे हनोई में क्यों है? हर चौथा आदमी ये वीजा फ्री जब से अजरबैजान हुआ है सब पहुंच कैसे गए हैं? But it's a good thing. We have the disposable income and we have the taste. And it's happening. India is going global. India is going abroad. It's getting cheaper. It's getting more fun. It's getting more accessible. It's getting more India-centric. पहले साला खाना नहीं मिलता था यार. Vegetarian खाना ढूंढने में लग जाते थे लोगों को. अब वो नहीं है. अब दुनिया vegan है. Stupidly so, but है. Right? So, I think we are living in a very interesting time for India. I think history books will remember this time as, I don't know, a time of great activity in this country. And so we'll talk about what I learned and what I think and things I know about traveling because I've been doing it way before I was doing content. But more specifically, lessons I learned from that trip. And I'm hoping to see you at that episode. I'm hoping to see you in the comment section. And tell you about this great podcast I recorded, by the way, with one of my heroes. We'll talk about it. I don't want to give away too much. I think some of you know from Instagram and Twitter. But anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this. I hope you enjoyed this. Do not forget to press the subscribe button. If you're still listening, what are you doing? Press it. Go. Boom. I'll see you on the other side.